This is Rob Fnuff from the Counter Charge Podcast, and you're listening to the Mantic Universe Podcast, the only podcast that has the balls to cover all their games.
You are listening to the Mantic Universe podcast. My name is Chris, and as ever, I'm joined by my good friend
Clem. I'm here. Yay! Hello, everybody.
And as a special one-off, we have an extra special guest who's kindly joined us from an enormous hotel room in London.
Hello.
The man, the myth, the legend, Steve Hildrew.
I saw a thing on the internet that said people are always saying the man, the myth, the legend, and then it's just some guy called Greg. Although in this case, it's just some guy called Steve. Hello, it's me. I'm
Not
Steve.
Just some guy.
I very much am. And the comment I'm in a hotel room in London. It is the smallest hotel room. It's not the smallest I've ever stayed in because I've stayed in worse, but it is pretty fucking tiny. Oh, I'm sorry. I do not swear. It literally says it right on the show notes in front of me. It's pretty tiny.
So we're off to a brilliant start.
So sorry.
I mean, very much. If there are people who are just some guy, that's very much describing me and Clem. You know, that's you know. So, Steve, I'm sure people know you from Death by Dragons, very popular YouTube videos. You know, very internet famous kind of a thing.
Oh, that's me.
That's you. But very good though, Steve. Very good. Some of the first videos and content I saw in Kings of War, and really, really good.
Thank you.
Obviously, your personality, your wonderful personality comes across really well. Obviously, for a long time, you were also doing the Mantic community updates, which I thoroughly enjoyed.
Until I stopped doing them.
Until you stopped. But that is an awful lot of extra work to do. And I imagine it's fun at first, but quite...
Hey there, I'm Brian.
And I'm Rick.
From Deadzone, the podcast.
And you're listening to Mantic Universe Podcast.
For everything Mantic under the sun.
Quite a thankless chore, I imagine.
Yeah, well, no, it's not thankless. People were very kind. I think it's mainly that I did them for 3 years, which is a long time in the history of Kings of War, I guess. I picked them. It wasn't even my idea. It was Kyle that did them originally before he joined Mantic. And when he joined Mantic, they kind of tailed off because he was being Mantic. And I said, can I pick them up? And he said yes. And so people liked them, and it was fun to do. I think after 3 years of it, and they became extremely irregular. And there was a long period during COVID, there wasn't a lot of news because there wasn't a lot happening, because most of the news was, hey, we're all still at home. And I just it became more of a chore. And then, I don't know, people have got a bit touchy recently. So no matter what because, you have to say stuff that you think is funny. And I ended up just annoying people instead of...
but I'm sure you annoyed some people, and I'm sure it was the same few people were getting irritated. Whereas actually a lot of us, like myself, were very much enjoying the videos, and I very much... You made me laugh. Maybe I didn't tell you that enough. Oh,
bless you. No, I think it was fine. I got a bit bored of doing them, if I'm honest, and I wanted to do something different. And I haven't actually done anything different yet, but I will. And the plan is that I will, certainly with the channel. And I cut back on a bunch of stuff, after I left Countercharge, and I cut back on the VT updates, mainly because my life got a lot busier and I took on a bunch more stuff. And I wanted to kind of focus on the stuff that I really enjoy. So I like doing the tournament reports, and I am going back to doing battle reports. In fact, I'm recording one. What day are we today? Monday? On Wednesday. Against the magnificent Andy 2D6. So we're recording that as a battle report. I'm trying to find a way to do those that is a bit less onerous, but still very watchable. And there's that. And so, there will be other stuff. And I want to do a bit more kind of hobby stuff on the channel as well. Just kind of a diary thing, or maybe just me talking about what I think, if people want to hear that a bit more. I don't know. Maybe if they don't have to watch, I guess, because it's my channel, right? That's how this podcast works, isn't it? Right?
That's literally how this works. Exactly.
It's long, though, isn't it? It's long.
Well, if you keep going on, it's going to be longer than normal. So, I mean, Steve, do you want to be part of the solution or part of the problem? So, moving on briefly, we haven't even got past the introduction.
Oh yeah, hi.
So, Steve was also for a very long time. I love all the Countercharge presenters, and I don't want to say I have favourites, but you were extremely, extremely good, and I want to thank you because you amused me and entertained me and informed me for many a long hour. So thank you so much, Steve.
Oh, you don't have to do that. No, yeah, I love Countercharge. I still love Countercharge. I still listen to Countercharge. I definitely have favourites, and it's absolutely not Matt Croger, just to be 100% clear. He's everyone's least favourite. And no, I love doing Countercharge, and that was really fun for a time. But again, it was time to stop that as well. And I think with if you're doing a content production thing, like I was on Dash 28 as well, writing for Dash 28, you have to be doing it like you have to keep it up. I think you can't dip in and out. And if you're getting to the point where you're dipping in and out, then I think it's time to knock it on the head, I think. And I did produce a lot of content for Countercharge. I've actually been really enjoying the stuff they've done recently. There's been some really good stuff.
I'm looking forward to the Firefight stuff. You won't be, Steve, because you hate sci-fi, but I'm really looking forward to it.
I just don't, I've only got room in my brain for one game, and it's Kings of War. So
if you're going to pick one, you've picked a good one.
Right.
There's that at least.
Right. I'm super obsessive, and I obsess about things, and there's no room for anything else. So it's just Kings of War all day, every day. That's how much my brain.
Just in case anyone's wondering, Clem is still with us.
Sorry, Clem.
I'm listening.
Yeah. I got a funny story about Clem because I met Clem and Chris when you came to Clash of Kings last year. Right?
That's correct.
That's
correct.
Right. And here's the thing: it was mid-COVID, or it was like towards the tail end of serious COVID, right? Or it was masks was compulsory. And here's the thing: Clem with a mask on is physically identical to my friend Matt Hobday, who happens to work at Mantic, right? And I launched into a funny rant about the absolute bull army that Matt had brought, which was the all aeronauts army at that particular thing, right? To Clem, who looked incredibly confused, at which point Matt himself put his hand on my shoulder, and it looked like then like I was talking bad about him behind his back to someone else. And I looked around, they could have been twins. And I was just talking to a random stranger that I'd never met before. Turns out to be Clem.
Yep. It was quite confusing. And
it's like a weird nightmare you had, just talking badly about my friend. And there he is. He's got his hand on me. Oh, my
my shoulder. You're in front of me as well. Ah!
But I've done that before, though, where I've missed up. Yeah, exactly this, where I've mistaken my friend for a random stranger and then done something incredibly inappropriate, like, whoa. And then the stranger. And then you can't really explain it from that point. There's no way of backing out of that gracefully. So yeah, I appreciate it's a tricky situation. Oh, and I don't think I've spoken to Clem about this yet, Steve, but I have mentioned to you maybe we go to the Northern Kings tournament next year.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Clem.
Maybe. Let's see how that one goes. I just wanted to say also the fun thing is right after you did that tiny mistake, guess who I played against?
Was it him?
Yeah.
Oh,
I played with him right after.
So it's like two brothers playing across the the table.
Let's say like that. So it was funny. It was funny.
One with a quote unquote just for fun all aeronauts list.
Oh God.
End quote. You won that game though, Clem, didn't you?
I did win it. If you ask him, it's because he got 4 double ones at the worst possible times, and they sure did help me not lose. But I got him quite good as well. I mean, I didn't just win; I crushed him thanks to 4 double ones.
If you're going to bring that list, though, I'm afraid you'll find very few people who are sympathetic to your plight. The struggle is real. Right, we've got a podcast to make, so let's just keep it moving forward, which is not something I've ever said on the podcast before.
I know.
So,
what? Sorry, what? Let's keep it moving forward.
What is
this? Unplugged Radio. Which one are we on? Which one is it? Where's Mike Rossi?
We're not on the list. We're the. If you're looking among the Mantic podcasts, we're still in the. I think we're still on the sort
the
of
baby one. You're my favorite.
Under the shelf Mantic podcast.
Yeah.
So apologies for last month. So listening back to a few episodes, I don't know if our podcast is weekly or monthly, and I interchange between the two. I don't understand the cadence of the podcast. So apologies, everybody. It's just that's just how it is. And then the other thing is I left in editing very, very quickly last month. And obviously describing our podcast as light touch editing is a bit of a stretch. That's a bit optimistic. I didn't hit the delete key and left in about 4 seconds of junk audio in at the very beginning of last month's episode. So apologies for that, everyone. You know, it's annoying. Did I go back and correct it? No. So apologies, everybody. But, you know, you get what you paid for, so that's fine. Good. Cool. Right. So,
wait, there's a tiny detail also from last episode, right? Like we kind of missed about 90% of the changes in the big red book. But I guess
that's worth mentioning. That's worth mentioning. Yeah. That's very worth mentioning. Yeah. And a lot of the things we said haven't changed did change. So, like the Lord on Frostfang lost a crushing strength. The Soul Flayers lost 2 speeds.
Was Clem literally going through the list and going, Soul Flayers are unchanged. Moving on.
No, we checked the points. We checked the points. Has it gone up or down? And but you know, that's pretty much it.
Mostly the same, right? I mean, what's 2 inches difference?
It's a lot. It's a lot.
Anyway, moving on.
Yes. So, apologies, everybody. But it's sort of, Steve, I'm going to hide behind the nonsense kind of, well, we're not really that kind of a podcast. We did sort of say, you know, go to if you really want the hard-hitting meta stuff, which is competence in this case, go to other podcasts. Other podcasts are available.
They're not as good, though, you know.
Well, you know. I'd like to think we have our own niche, you know.
I'm not sure what that niche is, but it's there. You're the one who does all the games. This is the only podcast with the balls to do all the games. Robin.
Oh, Steve, at the end, actually, that reminds me. Can you do a bumper for us at the end where you just say something wacky and go, hey, it's Steve Hildrew from lots of things. Internet famous, handsome Steve Hildrew. Listen to Mantic Radio podcast. But we're not called that.
Not called by you.
So you've got this. I'll give this to you, Steve.
This is Steve Hildrew. Listen to Countercharge.
Exactly. Play Warhammer. Good. Right, on this bombshell, should we talk about Mantic News?
Mantic News.
We've got 4 hours for this, right?
Pretty much.
That's about it.
So we've got the official Mantic News, and then we've got the Countercharge episode that Ronnie recorded without assistance. So, Mantic News. So we know the Sons of Amun starter set, the EOD and the Ogres, is on pre-order. I've pre-ordered 1. If I'm honest, I pre-ordered 2. €100 is incredible value. Comes with the big red book. Yeah. So you're getting an awful lot of stuff and the rules. Yeah, that just seems like great value, guys. Yeah. And there's new ogre models, new ogre, mega army box. Yeah, go for it, guys. Start talking about stuff.
Steve, we're listening.
I'm just looking. I'm just googling it to see what's in it. And
I can tell you what.
Have you guys also noticed actually the Mantic website looks a lot fancier and a lot more professional? Looks a lot more modern.
Yes,
and a lot of the new models pictures look way better than the old ones, which I think is a major improvement for Mantic.
Yep, absolutely. I think that it's part of the releasing the companion app, like they say 1st of November, so that's pretty soon, right? It's in a week or something. I like it. What I've seen so far seems pretty nice. I hope the search menus and so on will work even better than before. But I like it. I mean, there's also people. Oh no, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah?
Go on, finish your thought.
No, I just wanted to say also that people now have the big red book in their hands. Like I've seen my first actual physical copy last weekend. And I have to say, it's a really nice book. I thought it would be too big. I was a bit worried. Like, I don't want to have a huge book to carry around, and it's not that big. Backpack. So I was like, yeah, that's my news about the book.
Yeah, so I can't find a picture of the starter set, but
I can tell what it is.
Yeah, I think so. The starter set, I think it's just got infantry, hasn't it, for Empire of Dust? So Empire of Dust
It's
has
got
always
some cavalry too, buddy.
so infantry and
No,
cavalry.
that's cavalry.
It hasn't got enslaved guardians, is what I'm trying to say.
No, it doesn't.
Nope.
And I think enslaved guardians is kind of, if you're not taking enslaved guardians in Empire of Dust, you're probably doing it wrong, right? So that was something I was a bit sad it didn't contain them, but I really like the Empire of Dust. Empire of Dust is my next Mantic army, I would say.
Nice.
Interesting.
I've got a brilliant idea for how to do it. It's going to be amazing.
Do you want to tell us?
Well, no, because then someone else will do it. But the thing is, because if you do Empire of Dust, right, every Empire of Dust army looks the same, right? It's got sandy bases, and the skeletons are all clad in gold armor with blue highlights, right?
Yeah, it's powerful, but it is very powerful. But you're right. I've never seen an army that didn't look like that.
Exactly. So I'm going to try and do something different that might be quite fun. And I just kind of want to push myself a little bit to do something a bit different. I want to do lots of OSL in it, and I think I want it to be really kind of striking, because that's what I've really discovered, is that there's lots of people who can paint beautiful individual miniatures, but actually it's the overall look of a unit that makes you go, wow.
And all the units ranked up together, the whole army, right?
Yeah. So I think it's very cool, and I think EOD are really cool. I think ogres, people love ogres. I'm not a fan of ogres. I just don't like the army. But they are very good, very strong right now. And EOD have had a massive price reduction in their Cursed High Priest as well, which was the main problem with the army, because it relies on surge.
Steve, I'll stop you there. Where were you last week when we were talking about the rules changes?
I mean, I was listening to your podcast, yelling at my car stereo like that. No, you fool! They've gone down to speed 8. They're speed 8, Clem.
Isn't it exactly how you do good entertainment? We created emotions for listeners, right? Either people like you already knew how wrong we were, or people who will get their book and like, great, my Night Stalkers are exactly the same, and then no, like that's creating like emotions.
But it's okay. I did it to Countercharge as well, because they missed the Caterpillar Potion was gone, the single biggest change to the game, and they were like, "Well, that's about it." And I'm like, "No, it's not." Anyway.
No worries. If you can pass 290 pages in 2 days while also doing other stuff.
You need to just be part of chat groups that do all the gossip first, and then it's all fine.
Oh, there you go. That's what we need. Yeah, we need an in. That's right. Yeah, fantastic.
None of my thoughts are original. I simply enunciate them loudly. But I think the start set we got. I think I'd go for a mega army myself. I think the start set's ace if you're going to get into Kings of War. I think a mega army is definitely the way to go. I'm going to try and get one when I go to Mantic on Wednesday. So we'll see how we go.
It's just, I mean, I think the Big Red Book is reasonably priced at €50 or whatever it costs. Like, that's a huge book with a huge amount of rules for the money, and I think it's definitely a good deal. But then you think, well, if I chuck in another €50, I'm getting 2 ambush armies. And then, of course, the way my brain works, well, if I chuck in another €100, then I'm also getting... for €100 each, I'm getting 2 Kings of War armies that I can do something with.
There or thereabouts. There's some cool rules in EOD. Like, there's a guy on a chariot that any skeletons in combat with him gain his melee value. So all your 5-up melee skeletons are suddenly 3-up melee when they're in combat with him.
Okay, that's cool.
Interesting.
That's really cool.
Nice build.
And Steve, something we forgot to mention, or I forgot to mention earlier. The community updates, it looks like Johnny at Mantic, who's I think is relatively new. I think he started last week, community updates.
So he's been doing that for a while. So Johnny, he was like Rob Berman's protege. He's like their video guy.
Okay.
So that's why he's doing the videos. But he's been doing painting updates. They've been doing them for a while, but he's just made them really regular. So he just picks up models that people paint. Mantic models they paint and post online and talks about them. I think it's really nice. Yeah, so he's been doing that for a while. Every Wednesday he tends to put them out. I met him. He's a nice guy.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, he lacks your charisma, your unmistakable charisma, but
I wouldn't. He's got a lovely selection of hats, so there's that to go for him. I'm sure he's not listening. He's a great guy.
Yeah, it seems very nice when I've talked with him on email, and
right.
He comes across as very kind in the videos.
Yeah.
Super. And then, okay, so there's been quite a lot of official Mantic news. So we know there's a new Mantic companion app coming, which is more of a website than an app, if we're honest. But it seems like we've got stuck with the word app. But that's fine. So there was also, due to Countercharge and Ronnie Renton going on Countercharge, quite a lot of sort of unofficial news that's probably about 2 years worth. And it covered the whole gamut of really everything. I mean, it was a fascinating listen. What do we actually remember? It was so much information, guys.
So did he talk about, because I only caught a bit of it because my phone ran out of batteries halfway. Did he talk about what's in the Mantic Companion? So he talked about rankings. So he talks about international rankings. If you so tournaments you can run within the app. As long as they run within the app, you get submitted to an international ranking. Right? Got a live living rule book. And spoiler warning, everyone, might possibly have had some slight early access to the app, and I might have accidentally shown Chris and Clem. I just slipped and fell on my keyboard and then logged in.
It was really embarrassing because actually he was trying to show us something on Pornhub. Yeah. And he just so happened he had this open. It was, I mean, I was mortified.
Yeah. Me. Although your selection of what you wanted me to show you on Pornhub was disgusting.
It's all disgusting. Come on.
I mean, you're in Germany. I know where a home is filth.
Anyway, superb. That was 100% my fault. That was my fault. Why am I complaining? That was entirely my fault. That conversation went the way it did. Yes. Right. So 3D printing. So Mantic might be doing some 3D printing. They're looking into it, right?
Yes.
I think that's.
Go on, Clem.
No, that's what he mentioned on the pod, right? Like instead of having expensive resin bits to upgrade the sprues, potentially offer 3D printing for those things. If I understood correctly, what he mentioned. Mm-hmm. Is that right, Steve?
I believe so. Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, super.
Yeah. So I think he mentioned this. We were chatting about it at Clash of Kings actually. But it'll be whether it will be included in the subscription service for Mantic Companion. I don't know.
Be the case, yeah.
But I heard today that if you subscribed to Easy Army for a year's subscription, your year will carry over into Mantic Companion.
If you have any months left over when the Mantic Companion comes up, they will carry over into it. Yeah. I mean, for me. The main information from the whole podcast with Ronnie is they seem to be doing the smart thing, which is where can Mantic make money, and where they can make money is with plastic sprues. Those plastic sprues represent quite an investment initially, but then they're pretty cheap to produce compared to resin. Resin is very expensive to produce. I mean, it works well for a certain volume, but when you get volumes like Armada, I mean, it really becomes a big problem to catch up with all of your orders, and it leads to tons of various issues, whereas plastic sprues is really how you make money, I think, when you sell miniatures. And when you look at the starter sets, there are 2 resin miniatures and all of the rest is plastic sprues. And that's also what they said for the upcoming ambush quick starters or whatever, like with a few sprues. They can make them relatively cheap, compared to 3D printing your own stuff or buying other resin miniatures or something. You get plastic. It's pretty cheap for you, the end customer, but for them, it's like printing money, right? Like once you've invested to make the steel or aluminum molds, selling more sprues is like just printing money, and that's what they need to be doing. And for me, it's the same thing with the 3D printing. I thought it was extremely smart on their part to say, yeah, we love 3D printing. Please 3D print the small bits to expand on the plastic sprues that we're happy to sell you for a very good price, where we still make 95% profits. And so all in all, I think it's really good news for the future of Kings of War and Mantic selling miniatures for it. For me, that's the biggest takeaway from the whole discussion, right? Like trying to also create more sprues for all armies. I think you mentioned sprues for the Northern Alliance, which might be some dwarves, but it's unclear. I'm not 100% sure. It might be some cavalry. Who knows what that will actually be. He mentioned some other sprues.
Flying
Nice.
dwarves, wasn't it? Flying dwarves.
Flying dwarves. Yeah, he mentioned flying dwarves. Yeah.
Really? Yeah. Well, didn't hear that part. I heard about dwarves, but flying, not. I don't know. I hope not. I don't like flying dwarves. I like dwarves slow so that I can come and punch them in the face. But anyway.
Do you remember the concept art for Armada where there was like the flying dwarf thing? And it was, and they were like, what does everyone think of this? And we were like, not very good. That was good. Sorry, Clem, I interrupted you for the 100th time. Sorry, buddy.
That's all right. Was it the thing that they ended up changing afterward?
That's it. Yeah.
All right. But yeah, I think he mentioned also plastic butchers / something else that would come with the Twilight Kin. I think about the same time. I guess there's also at least one infantry sprue for the Twilight Kins. So yeah, I really like the strategy where every army has at least 2 plastic sprues. I'm pretty sure also he talked so much about Trident Realms and Thools or whichever units that was. There will be something in that direction as well.
Yeah, and it's such a shame with Trident Realm because there's so many ways you could go, but most of those are pretty much blocked off because it would be so difficult to actually get all Mantic Gigas or, there's loads of, depth horrors or whatever. It's some of the most popular units are actually really, really hard to do with Mantic models. So it's great to hear. I really got the sense they were addressing that problem.
Yep, that part was exciting. Yeah, what else did he mention? There was so many things. I was like, I need to listen to that again and take notes, and obviously didn't. But
me too, buddy. Me too. I mean, to be honest, overall, maybe we can just talk overall impressions then, because we don't remember the specifics. And obviously, anyone listening, I encourage you to go and listen to the Countercharge episode. But my overall impressions were I was just nodding endlessly. So, my impressions were extremely positive. And it was a lot of things you talked about on the pod previously, Clem, of things you'd like to see. There was even mention of, on the new app that, you can click a button and you can buy stuff that's in your list. And it seems like that's going to be in the app. So it seems like loads of ideas people have been throwing around. They've kind of coalesced. And mind you, having said all that, I'm sure a lot of this is subject to change because I think Ronnie loves to make people happy and he loves to, he gets very, very exercised and, very passionate about what he's saying. So be interested to see how much of it comes to bear fruit, but it all sounded amazing as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting because they were talking about his bit about resin and plastic. I thought was really eye-opening, right? Because everyone was raised about the quality of Mantic resin, but his point was there's no scalability in it. As in, if I make 10 resin butchers, I make the same profit as if I make 100 resin butchers. This is what Clement was talking about, right? And then,
yes.
But for the plastic sprues, it's a massive investment up front, and he's never had the capital to do that until recently. And I'm not, they're not GW. They have to focus their resources. But I'm personally glad they're moving away maybe from mass resin production because I think I don't like resin as a it breaks, it snaps, it's fiddly. Not a fan.
Not me. The quality's good, but I've got 4 boxes of resin Kalishis for Asterians. Steve, don't worry about what all that means.
I don't know what it means.
And they're just honestly, they've got bows. They're so spindly and delicate. Honestly, I built 1 box and it was just an absolute nightmare. Just I try and glue 1 bit on, another bit snaps off, and it's like, oh, come on, please.
And it's like if you're going to keep producing, and it's really expensive as well.
Yeah.
Mantic resin, I understand why it's expensive because production costs, right? But it's so expensive, and when you've got a resin printer, and I feel guilty every time I resin print something because I want to be supporting the company, right?
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, I can print a whole army on a bottle of resin. And there's hundreds and thousands of free models. It's just like, I don't feel the value for money is there, both on their side and on our side, just for the quality. So actually, we'd be better off buying their hard plastics to support the company.
And still printing stuff in resin. The problem is, if you're looking at doing a Basilean army, let's say, and you go, okay, what do I want? Well, I want 3 hordes of Palace Ogres. Okay, let's check the Mantic website. How much are 3 models? €45, whatever they are now. And it's like, okay, so how many of them do I need for full model count? Okay, how many of them do I need for minimum model count? That's still a lot of money.
Yeah,
and then you can 3D print something similar for not a lot of money. It is putting us as consumers who love the company, is putting us in a tricky position.
And you have a 20% discount. So you don't, if you don't buy it from the Mantic website, if you buy it from a third party, there is a 20% discount. So that, it is feasible. But
yeah,
I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah, definitely. So I think we're really happy to see this kind of problem being reduced in a way. Yeah, and when we're saying, and obviously Ronnie's saying, Mantic have never had this kind of capital that they can invest back in the business. What do we think recently has Mantic just been doing really well across the board, or do we think it was Armada that sold really well? Let's wildly speculate where they've made a few quid.
I know. Mantic is a UK company, so their accounts are filed publicly every year. So, you can go and look at them, but the company's never made, I don't know if you should say this really on a podcast, but, they never made a profit. So, I live in constant fear that Mantic goes under, and then my only hobby, I don't have one, and I'm going to have to go back to, killing prostitutes or whatever my other hobbies are. I
love the way you said you can't say that on the podcast, and then you went on to say something much worse, quite casually on the podcast. I'm not editing that out, Steve. You're gonna.
Please, I apologise to all 3 of our listeners.
All 3 of our listeners, no matter what your job is, we love you all, and thank you for listening.
Right. I fully support sex work in both. Anyway.
In both what?
both morally and financially.
Oh, okay, right, good.
Anyway, sorry everyone. Sorry.
Steve's calling from his lonely hotel room in London.
2 beers.
So
all odds are off. I've had 2 beers and a cold sandwich for dinner.
This is what happens on a Monday night, on a cold Monday night. Yeah.
Got a meeting tomorrow morning. Right.
No, it's get it out of your system now, Steve.
What are we talking about? Haven't we got some show notes?
We're talking about Mantic Games, Steve.
All right. Mantic news.
What is the future? Now tell us about the future. Like, make some predictions, secret hopes about Kings of War in the future, Mantic Games in general, life, new hobbies. Tell us everything. We want to know all about you, buddy.
I think, I really hope that I think the game thrives on the players that play it, right? And I think we've seen an expansion of players, and in the US, the number of players playing has expanded. I don't know how it is in Germany, but I feel in the UK we've seen a recovery in the number of gamers. I'm hoping that continues to grow, because that's what the company relies on, and that will allow us. Because really, where they want to be is all armies have a model range that you can buy from Mantic, right? And I talked to Ronnie about this because Ronnie's very keen to start, doing stuff like all armies have to be Mantic at Clash of Kings, stuff like that, right? Because that's his livelihood, right?
Yeah.
But my point is the open model policy which the game has is actually what you'd call, like in video games, you call it a newbie hose, right? If you've got an online game, like a massively multiplayer online game, you need a newbie hose. A constant stream of newbies to account for people dropping off. And actually, model agnostic playing is the newbie host for Mantic, and you can't switch that off because then you don't get as many newbies. So I think it's a very careful balance between wanting more Mantic armies. Really, the quality of miniatures is what drives that. And I want to see them producing the level of quality that you can get through just 3D printing miniatures, for example. Right? So I think pushing to continue to build new ranges is great, it's a balance between pandering to the tournament players with loud voices and newbies, and I always get nervous when we start to pander to tournament players too much, because actually newbies are the lifeblood of the hobby, and people who go to 17 tournaments a year are not, despite they will have a high spend, but they're not the body. So I hope Mantic continues to work on that balance. They're a tiny company, isn't it? But they've got some really good people. I'm just rambling now.
It's fine. No, Steve, it's literally interesting. So no, really good. Yeah. And I mean, for all the reasons we've discussed, and the fact you can buy a very nice 3D resin printer for, let's say, £200 now that will print minis. It doesn't seem like there is much of a future in printing resin, Mantic printing resin, right, as a profitable business. So the idea of making hard plastics, for all the reasons we've talked about, sounds like it makes an awful lot of sense.
I think so. And as technology improves, there is increasing availability of hard plastics as well. Where it's a very unattainable, it's very, very expensive to create a sprue. I think the hardware cost is coming down, while material costs and postage costs are going up. So the balance, isn't it? But I hope so too. Yeah, it'll be fine, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
I really hope so.
I think as a complete beginner, you kind of want a plastic sprue that is well designed rather than resin models, or have to 3D print your own models, right? Like if you're trying to enter this hobby, I think that's the easiest thing to do, right? Just clip some parts of the sprue, a little bit of glue, and boom, it's done. It's like it doesn't break, it's not dirty like resin printing at home. And it's potentially cheap, right? You can get great starter boxes for a small ambush force, something like this, for really not that much money. And that's exactly what they've been doing and what they seem to be gearing towards. And I think that that's super smart. So as also Kings of War fan and Mantic fan, I'm super happy that's what they're doing. I don't see a better strategy to. So.
And for example, the ogres, the hard plastic ogres, which are up for pre-order now, they look great. And there aren't that many ogre models on the market. So, I could see players of other games or RPG players going for those models. It's great. Yeah.
Yeah, you can use them for other stuff, and I think they're pretty well designed. It's absolutely true.
And the only other thing I think we wanted to talk about, guys, was the withdrawal rule in Kings of War becoming optional.
Oh.
Now, as Clem knows, I barely understand the withdrawal rule as it is, but to me, making it optional seems like the worst of all worlds. What do you guys think? Because that's going to make it more confusing.
So there is a story behind this, which is it was to be removed, and then a small but extremely vocal group of players made a big stink and said they would quit completely if it was removed, and so it was made optional. Right?
That's not a very healthy thing to do, though, if you're a player to demand like that, is it?
If those players, on their point of view, felt that it would significantly lessen the game to remove it. I think we need to play test both ways, is what I would say. I think it's extremely regional about how people are going to play. I think in the US, they're probably going to keep it as is. In the UK, I think most tournaments will lose it.
So, Steve, what are your feelings about it then? Let's just get our cards on the table.
I don't really mind. I think I'm not advanced enough of a player to. I think withdrawal is something that, I've been caught out by opponents. It's not something I catch them out with terribly often. It's a nice, if you're at a really, really high level of play, it comes up more, right? And there are certain situations where it is extremely powerful. However,
when somebody did it against you, did it feel bad?
Yeah, it's a shit. It's a. But when you do it, you feel super clever. I'm so clever. I've got you. But
is it clever? Is it clever though?
It's super
is
clever.
that clever?
Is
that clever?
I think it is. Yeah, it is. I think it is. I mean, I don't think I've ever done it like the clever way. Like, sure, sometimes you have one thing that might happen and gets you a tiny advantage, or you think, oh, maybe I could get something out of this, and so you kind of try to protect against it. I think the only time where I saw it happen a lot was I played on UB2 someday against, I don't remember who, but a really good player, and he got so many flank and rear charges against me with dwarves. It was like, how is that even possible? And then, like, once he did it, it was like, oh yeah, now I understand why he placed that unit that way. That didn't make sense to me. Like, he really laid traps. It was like, I don't really get why he's doing that, but okay. I mean, it's sort of good for me, right? And I don't know. And it wasn't a bad experience at all. It was, I lost like terribly. Like, it was just completely crushed. But I think it was still interesting to play. It kind of motivated me to learn how to do those tricks, because it's also impressive. It's like, oh yeah, you could do that. That's neat. Like, that's an impressive move. But I don't know. I mean, yeah, I'm not too sure.
Cool.
If you have one of those MSU multiple small unit lists, like with lots of regiments in it, it's a really cool way with regiments. If I have lots, like 7 regiments of shock troops in a Ratkin list, and I position them so you've got one, so it's not just a flat line all the way along the edge, but actually they're staggered in a different way. So and then you lure somebody into charging the wrong unit, you've got loads of options of positioning, right? Those options don't go away, they're just lessened somewhat. And you don't, if you've got square based units, you can still do corkscrew charges. It doesn't change for square base, it's only rectangular bases you now can't do it with, because you can't withdraw to the corkscrew. So it lessens the archetypes that can use corkscrew charges to powerful square-based units like Dwarf Lords, Lords on Frostfang, Werewolves.
For any listeners that don't know what a corkscrew is, can we explain it in about 20 seconds, or would we need longer? Should we tell them to look it up?
If you've got nimble and you're a square-based unit, it means you don't have to. You can just literally, rather than attacking the unit in front of you, if you're taller than them and you can see the unit behind them, you can turn once, move, turn again, that's your 2 turns, and charge into the unit behind, right? It's a corkscrew charge. Or let's say there's a unit next to the unit you're attacking and its base is sticking out.
Ever so slightly even.
Yeah.
So they're not flush together.
And you're in their flank. So instead of attacking the one in front, you turn and attack the one to the side. It's a flank charge, double your attack, so it's corkscrewing, right? It's a clever way of using your nimble units, basically. The difference is that you need 2 turns to do it, or you need to be a square base. And previously, if I had a regiment and I withdrew an inch, I could corkscrew into the unit next to me. I can't do that anymore.
Or horde, right? Like large infantry also can do that.
Large infantry
could do that,
but monstrous can't, because they're too big. So I always found it weird. So the one example where my friend took his Hellfane, the Defense 6 giant
Abyssal Dwarf thing.
Abyssal Dwarfs, and he withdrew an inch and just pivoted once, charged off down the side into another unit, and I'm like, how is that? That's stupid.
That feels bad, yeah.
It's like, I'm in combat with you, we're fighting, and then it just goes like, beep,
exactly.
Beep,
I'm just
beep,
ignoring you, and off I go and charge that. I think this is what you were describing with the corkscrew. I don't think I have morally, and bear in mind I've never faced or done any of this, but I don't have a problem, I think, with the corkscrewing. But this illogical backing up and charging something else, I just don't think that makes sense.
But like, if I'm a hero, if like I'm a werewolf, right, and I'm the one in front and there's someone right next to me, I think it's totally realistic that I might shove them back and go into the one on the side. That makes sense to me.
Right.
Or if I'm nimble, I might like shove them back and then leap over them because I'm so nimble into the one in the back. I get it. That makes a lot more sense than a unit of shock troops going hut, 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 turn, let's go, hut, 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 into the one in the side, right? It doesn't make... So what they've got left, to me, makes a lot more sense logically, and I get why that's more appealing to new gamers. It's just pissed off a particularly small segment of high-end tournament gamers who love the cleverness of withdraw. And so that's where we are. I think, expect it to go for version 4. It will be gone. Forget it. Version 4, it's gone, I think.
Cool.
So what is in version 4, Kings of War 4? What is it?
Alright.
What's your dream for now
Alright.
that you're there? Well, no withdraw. Okay, I get it. What
No
else?
withdrawal. I think no withdrawal, no allies. That's what I think.
Version 4 sounds amazing. Hooray! Good. Right. On that note, should we move on? Right, that's enough Mantic news. That's plenty. So should we move on to our Pannithor? Steve, Kings of War. We're still counting you at Clash of Kings as new news.
I love Kings of War. What are we talking about?
Kings of War.
Yeah.
You at let's talk about you Clash of Kings.
Clash of Kings. I went to Clash of Kings.
So was it in London? So let's set the scene. Was it in London? Am I remembering that right?
Yes. So Clash of Kings this year was at London GT, which is a giant 40k tournament. There's 700 plus Warhammer 40k players there. They have AOS there. They had like War Master. There was a Digimon tournament. It's massive, right? We were on a balcony, so it's in an athletics stadium. And then Kings of War was there. There was around 64 players, about which half were from Europe. So we had French, Spanish, Dutch, Polish there. So, it was a good detachment. A lot of Spanish players, a lot of French players. I didn't see any Germans.
I don't know of anyone that went. Yeah, I don't know if anyone went. But the French contingent, some of the French contingent made it for the Germany GT a couple of years ago, and they were delightful.
I love the French players. They're really super cool people. They are really super. And I learned to play Kings of War with Arthur Weiss, who's a really cool French guy, plays Trident Realm. And he was there. It was really cool to see him. I didn't recognize him. He came over and went, "Hey, Steve, how are you?" And I went, "Have we met?" And he went, "It's me, Arthur." And I'm like, "You've grown a beard. How would I possibly know?"
You have something as in faces, right?
And then Steve, and then Arthur Weiss tapped you on the shoulder, and you went, "What?
Yeah,
There's two of you again."
So a lot of players didn't go because it's though it's called London GT, it's in a particularly crappy area of London called Edmonton. I used to live there. It's like the armpit of London.
It's in North London, isn't it? Edmonton?
North East London.
Yeah.
It's not very travelable too, and there wasn't any accommodation nearby. And actually, we had a real trauma. So I had a house. I'd arranged an Airbnb for 7 people, including me, and they cancelled it 2 weeks before LGT. And long story short, we ended up in St Albans, which is about half an hour away. But they refunded me almost the entire cost. So it was about £8 a day for us to stay there. So it was great. We were very happy. But so a lot of people didn't go. So it's 64 players isn't very big for Clash of Kings. It's been near 100 usually. But I would say it was, the tournament was fine. The venue was fine when you got there. It was the hardest room I've ever played in terms of player ability. Super high. A lot of the European players that came over were very, very. The Spanish are always good. They're just deadly. Their meta is ridiculous. They take the filthiest list. They have no shame. And just very, very, very good players across the board. So it was a real tough tournament. Very tough. Lots of shooting, and there wasn't a lot of terrain, which made shooting easier.
So, Steve, let's back up a little bit. So, it's, I guess, 2,300 points?
Yeah, 2,300, 5 games over 2 days, 3 on the first day, 2 on the second day.
Nice, classic. And what did you take?
Oh, I took Rift Forge Orcs. I've been playing Rift Forge Orcs for a while.
Hey!
I took my Rift Forge Orc list, which got pretty splatted quite a lot.
Oh.
But I think... it had some major shortcomings in it. But yeah, no, I had some really, really close games. If you want to see the games, of course, there is a video battle report available on my channel, which is Death by Dragons on YouTube. Not to spoil it too much, but please go watch it. And
I will go and watch it.
It is a good report. I like your report, Steve. I can say it face to face. I like what you do.
At least when someone watches. Obviously not Chris. But...
I have watched.
I have.
Well, I thought about watching the video, Steve, but then I thought, I thought it was better to get you on the pod without me,
Did you think it was a bit long? Is that why? Were they a bit long?
A bit long. 3 hours is a bit too long, Steve, for a video battle report.
It's too long.
It's too long.
But it's too. Yeah, so it was good. It's one of the, I enjoyed it more than I enjoyed any other Clash of Kings, if I'm honest. We had a great time, but I think that's largely because I was in this really cool Airbnb. It was really fun, and we had, we went back on Saturday night. We played board games. We played Secret Hitler. Have you played Secret Hitler?
No, I've heard about it though. One of you is secretly evil, basically, and you're kind of deducing who it is. Is that right?
Possibly not a popular game in Germany. I can't imagine why, but it's a game basically where you're playing two of you, or one of you or two of you, is secretly a member of the fascist party, and you have to get fascist policies in. And it's very clever. I didn't really understand it, but I was playing it with a bunch of guys who did, and one of them was Hitler anyway. And then we played Cash and Guns. Have you played Cash and Guns?
Again, I've heard of it.
Right. So it's a game where everyone has a foam gun. It's very complicated, but you end up pointing guns at people for fun, and then whoever gets the most. Anyway, it was really fun. I was quite drunk at the time, so.
Excellent. So you just had a really good time with your friends. That sounds.
Yeah, pretty much. And I had 5 really fun games. 3 of them or 4 of them really were very, very, very close. Or in my head, they were close. One of them probably wasn't very close at all. He absolutely was. I like to think it was close. And I played 2 Americans. I played 1 French guy. It was great.
Amazing. Fantastic. And final standing, Steve, how did you do?
Oh, terrible. Watch my battle report to find out. That's what I'd say.
Okay, dear listeners, let's all get over there to YouTube.
That's right.
Next thing we do after listening to all 3 hours of the podcast, that would be great.
YouTube.com/Death by, I don't know what it is. Just Google it. It's fine.
Death by Dragons. Yeah, it's excellent.
Yeah.
And Steve, by the way, where did the name come from?
Can't remember. And that's terrible, isn't it? I think it's because when I started playing Kings of War, it was a bunch of guys in Kidderminster who don't play anymore, apart from one of them. And one of them loved to take dragons in his elf army, and he would just kick the living snot out of me. And then he would play undead and kick the living snot out of me. He just really consistently beat me. It was very irritating. And so I started to do battle reports just because I was watching Visibly Riley, who doesn't make reports anymore. I love his reports. And I was just trying to copy him, really. And it was a good way to learn, so I just put them online. And I think I had to come up with a name, so I came up with that name. I'm not quite sure why. It's stuck now, isn't it? Stuck with it. Can't change it.
Does the job. Like MUP, Mantic Universe Podcast. That's it. Right. It does the job. Yeah.
The only podcast that'll do all the games, even the bad ones.
Excellent. Super. Great. And you've got another game on Wednesday. And how regularly are you sort of getting a game in at the moment then, Steve, would you say?
Weekly. So there's about 6 or 7 players in my area within about half an hour, but a bunch of people don't drive. So I tend to drive around and play people. About every week. But we're all kind of mid-table type of players, really. I mean, Simon, that I play against a lot, is a good player. He's a Masters player. But the rest of us are kind of mid-table. We have a good time. But on Wednesday, I'm playing Andy 2D6, who's a very good player. Very good player.
Do you change how you approach things, Steve, when you play someone you know is a really good player?
Yeah, well, I was going to take elves, and I was going to take the filthiest elf list I could possibly imagine, because elves are filth right now.
Right.
But because I'm going to Mantic, I want to take a Mantic army, and so I had to borrow some of Clive from Mantic's elves, and then the bugger forgot to leave them on his desk for me, so I haven't got any elves to play with. So now I'm going to have to play something else.
Can I suggest, though, Steve, take your Riftforged Orcs, which we know are not the bleeding meta list, and then when you lose, you can be like, because you don't want to take the filthiest list you can think of and still get beaten.
No, I think I'm going to take Ratkin. Just because I haven't played them for a while, and I'm bored of playing Riftforged Orcs, and they've got some major. And I think if I was going to fix the errors I've got, I'd need to paint a bunch of stuff, and I can't be bothered.
Fair enough. Oh, that's fine. Yeah.
I'll take some rats and just he can beat me up.
That sounds good, but don't fall in the trap of trying hard and still being thrashed.
But the thing is that I know that Andy's a better player than me, so it's just for fun, really. We had a match on his channel a while ago, and he beat me on that one, and then this is the rematch.
Nice. Clem, have you played any Kings of War lately?
I happen to have played a bunch, actually. I usually don't get that many games in. but over the past 2 or 3 weeks, I played, I don't know even how many games. I tried Ambush for the first time. Played with a local player here. We played 1,000 points. My ogres against his abyssal dwarves. We played Control, and just perfect. Just exactly what I was expecting from it. Like pretty quick to set up and play. And the guy I played with is also sort of a beginner with Kings of War, not with other games, but with Kings of War. And he said, "Oh yeah, I really enjoyed that game because it's a little bit faster, and also there's a little bit less to get together to have an army to play, and that really got me back on track to get some games in for Kings of War." So yeah, mission accomplished just for one game. I was like, "Yep, that's great. That's exactly it." Then I played in 10mm Kings of War. I know you, Chris, hate it, but I love it. Played against Rakin with my undeads, exactly the same list, like 3 hordes of skeletons and Vampire and Dragon and some Wraiths or Wraths, like the defense 6 troops. Those guys are always really strong in my lists. I don't know. I just love them. And it was super fun because I deployed it quite differently than what I usually do. And so the list played quite different, but it worked well. So I'm super happy with this army as well because initially it was a slow grow thing that we did locally in Berlin here. So we decided, okay, let's craft a list before we play any game or buy anything or paint anything, and then build this list and never ever touch it again. And then you have your 2,000 points list and you just play with that one. And it is quite an experience. I mean, I like it. Like you need to learn a little bit, okay, how do I play this thing that I theory crafted when I wrote the list, but I had no idea. And so that was fun. Then I played a demo game again using ambush rules with a new local player. This time I used the ogres versus my abyssals, and turns out he won the game. So that was pretty interesting. I didn't even try to lose, like I was explaining to him because he had never read any rules from Kings of War, so he knows other tabletop games, obviously, and was looking for a rank and file good system. He was thinking about Oathmark, I think, and then he realized, okay, there are more Kings of War players in Berlin, so why not try Kings of War instead? But he had never read the rules, like the free rules or battle reports or anything. So he literally knew nothing, and in about 2.5 hours, he went from I know nothing about this game to I win my first 1,000 points game against a mediocre player, maybe, but I mean, I've played quite a few games in the past, so yeah, I mean...
What an amazing teacher you are. What an incredible teacher you are.
Maybe that's it. I'm too focused on trying to explain what's going on with the game. No, I mean, it's just, I think, obviously a smart guy, like some people understand how games work, I think. Some people will watch for an hour or something and say, oh, are you sure you don't want to do this instead? And they're like, come on, I know the game better than you do. Like, you just discovered it. And you realize, wait a second, that's not such a bad idea, actually. I'm not really like that, but some people are. And that guy, I think, is kind of this type of person. So, yeah, I mean, that was much more games than I usually get for like over 1 week, 3 games. Crazy. And then, Chris, maybe we can say a quick word about last weekend as well, right? And we also played a bunch. Do you want to say something about it?
Oh, I definitely do, buddy. So I turned 40, and to celebrate such an event, I had Clem and just a few very, very good friends of mine over for the weekend. So the sleeping arrangements were interesting. There was a fully grown man sleeping in a hammock in the hallway. But it was a very nice hammock, Steve. It was a very nice garden hammock.
It was a bit wet, but
yeah, it turned out. So I thought I dried it out, but it turned out it was. I mean, it's not a 5-star hotel. I mean, what can I say, Steve? But apart from some sleeping arrangements that were suboptimal, Clem, I think you did just having the sofa was relatively good. You know, being stuck on the sofa, that was relative luxury.
I did well.
But yeah, apart from that, I mean, it was just such an amazing weekend. So I think we're going to we're going to go into more kind of detail as to some of these things in the next episode. So we played, Clem, we played 2 games of Ambush. So we played Reforge Orcs against Northern Alliance.
Twice.
And played that twice. In the first game, so it was me and my friend Chris, who's never played Kings of War before, against Clem. And Clem, you took the Riftforge Orcs. And the first game, my deployment was just a disaster. And I have to say my deployment because Chris had no idea what was going on. And after the game, where I got absolutely crushed, and I said to Clem something like, "Clem, where did it all go wrong for me?" And he said, "To be honest, I have no idea what you were trying to do." So that was interesting. And then in the second game, no. Then in the second game, by the way, Ambush works great. The second game made some tactical changes, shall we say, Steve? You know, moved a few things around. You know, listen to some of Clem's advice. I get all my best ideas from my opponents. Mm-hmm. And it went a lot better. I've got to say, Clem had 3 lots of double ones. That was the thing that happened.
That's just tactics, right? That's
exactly. I just knew. Well,
I'm going to flank charge right here so that you can charge me, and then double one so that I can rear charge.
A troop of devastated half-elf berserkers, double wand, bang.
Easy.
So that was beautiful. And then it's worth mentioning, Clem, that you conceded, and then Chris, you conceded, and then Chris, the very nice guy, he said, "Oh no, you can still win. Let's just play the last round." At which point, Clem tabled us, and it was a draw.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, because I only had like 2 individuals left on the table. Like I had 0 unit strength.
Yeah.
And it was like the end of turn 5, I believe.
Everyone was dead. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, it was brutal.
You just like one poor regiment or troop left with tons of wounds. And I said, but actually, maybe if we play
it was a regiment of human clansmen. Yeah. And they were you wavered us, so we couldn't attack back. So then you finished us off. Yeah. But it was what was incredibly impressive was just it felt like Kings of War. We got the epic, exciting moments you get in a big game of Kings of War. So, you know, as already you can tell from our excitement, it was really, really, really fun, and it was fast. It was great, and we played in a local gaming shop, and loads of people came over just going, "Hey, what the heck are you guys doing? This looks amazing."
Was is that or something? I assume.
Yeah, but beautiful, Steve. Beautiful. Just honestly, exactly. Yeah, they were a bit more friendly than that, though.
Yeah,
you wouldn't.
That's just so good. This is the maximum German I can do.
If you just say "Was ist das," that might come across as a tiny bit aggressive.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Which is kind of German, I guess.
But, yeah. That's true. That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. Oh, quite often when Germans might come across as quite aggressive, they're not necessarily intending to be. But I'm aware, Steve, you work for a German company without mentioning any names, so I'm sure you've got some stories to tell. Yeah. So moving on very, very swiftly. So, and then the other thing we did, there was a load of sci-fi stuff. So, Steve, you won't be interested in that. We'll talk about that when you're off the call. But we played. You will be interested in this though. So yesterday. It was yesterday, wasn't it, Clem?
Yeah.
It was literally yesterday. My goodness. We played a game of Siege with the new Big Red Book, and it was quite possibly the best experience I've had playing tabletop games.
Wow! What a glowing recommendation.
At some point, Clem said, "Chris, this is literally your perfect game, isn't it?" And I thought about it, and it was absolutely right. So we played. What was it, Clem? So it was 2. So we had 4 players, 2 against 2. So it was a co-op game. Yeah. 2,300 points per player.
Oof.
We finished playing sci-fi stuff at about 2:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
And then I jokingly said to Clem, for our siege game tomorrow, do you want to just write a story before you go to bed?
Yeah.
And then I went to bed, came down the next morning, and Clem had written the story for the game. So yeah, I mean, he must have slept at some point.
It's pretty quick. It's fine.
Yeah, but it was amazing. So we had evil Basileans. I think I'm saying that right. No one knows how to say it. So it must be.
Isn't it Basileans?
We're not getting into this now. I don't care.
No, I don't really care either. Basilian. Everyone's in my head.
Basilean. Yeah.
Who gives a shit? Move on. So evil Basileans.
Yeah. So the lovely story Clem wrote is up on the Facebook group. So I encourage everyone to have a look at the MUP Facebook page. So it was them and some Riftforge orcs that they'd summoned. So that the leader of the Basileans, he thought he was still being good, but unfortunately he was not. He turned evil without realizing.
Yeah.
So easily done.
Happens all the time.
That's right. And so the Northern Alliance were holed up in their castle, and they were trying to perform a ritual to banish the evil. So in the courtyard of the castle, there was a ice witch. No, what's she called? Ice, not witch. Anyway.
No, it's the Ice Queen and the Salamanders. Like it's
Ice
the
Queen
ritual.
And the mage priests. They were there doing their ritual. Yeah. To close the rift.
The ritual fire. That was the pun, obviously. Ritual of ice and fire. Maybe.
Oh, it was really good.
Anyway,
it was particularly good because the Salamanders were rushing to help the Northern Alliance. Exactly. Yeah.
The trick.
And so we played. I think we played 5 rounds fully, and then we kind of rolled some key dice to sort of resolve what had happened. And I think, Clem, stop me if you disagree. So I think in terms of the narrative of what was happening, so the Salamanders, so the Northern Alliance all deployed in the castle, which was too small for them.
It was a bad idea. Yeah.
It was in terms of the game, it was a bad idea, but we kind of felt like it was just the narrative thing to do, right? It was just they were all in their castle. Now we took some heavy casualties trying to get out of the castle when we realised the castle was very much a death trap. But nevertheless, so the evil Basileans were approaching from one side of the castle, and the Riftforge orcs were approaching the other side of the castle. So I took the brave/stupid decision to put my Salamanders down, facing off against the Riftforge orcs, because those walls are 8-10 nerve, defense 7. They're not going to last long with the Riftforge orcs around.
Do you know that's a typo?
We thought it might be. Are they fearless something?
They're supposed to be 1820.
Oh no. Okay. Right. Okay. Yeah. I must admit we twigged because the gate was fearless 17. So we twigged something wasn't quite right.
The walls are supposed to be 1820 as a typo.
Oh, there you go. Okay, well
that one, it was on the someone on the Goonhammer article about it.
There we go.
Posted, sorry, that's a typo. It should be 1820.
There we go. But the Salamanders, and it was actually my first ever game with my Salamanders army. They threw themselves at the Riftforge orcs to keep them away from the castle walls.
Yeah.
And I would describe it as the attackers went first. So the Riftforge orcs really got into the Salamanders. It was a horrible slaughter, but we rallied really well. And it was just a bloodbath, wasn't it, Clem, to be quite honest? It was just
it was a successful sacrifice.
Yeah, exactly. So we heroically threw ourselves. We were trying to get to the gates, trying to heroically defend the gates. But we couldn't because the Riftforge Shrine just said no. And so almost all the orcs were dead, but the shrine was there blocking our entrance to the gate. The Northern Alliance we tried, but the power of the Riftforge orcs was broken, and then I think the surviving Salamanders just had to flee, and then around the gate. So some of the Northern Alliance had tried to sort of sally forth and got slaughtered at the gate, but some Frostfang Cav actually made it out okay. The giant climbed over. Harin, the legendary giant, he climbed over the wall. The wall very much nearly collapsed under some artillery fire. It was very, very close to collapsing and killing him, but mercifully it didn't, and that would have been a terrible way to lose Rin. And he ended up kind of saving the day on the Salamanders side, actually. I think without Rin jumping in. So that was really, really cool. But unfortunately, the Northern Alliance round about the gate, pretty much we decided were slaughtered. The Frostfang Cav got into stuff and just started murdering their way forward. That was really sweet. So I think they probably survived the battle. They were off pillaging somewhere. And a horde of Scorchwings was the only Salamanders units who were on the other side of the castle to where the rest of the army deployed. And they spent the whole game staying out of the evil Basilians' way, ended up flying over the line. And then, crucially, at one point, they flew in the rear of were they paladins? No, not paladins. There was a horde of, I don't know, spearmen, man-at-arms or something. Yeah, don't know. Went in the rear, did 20-something wounds, took them off, one-shotted them. They've got Pathfinder, so they were not hindered. That was really amazing. And then a part of the wall and a tower collapsed on the castle, and some snow trolls just sort of stepped into the breach, not really understanding what was going on. And there was some angry Elohi there. The Elohi, I think they murdered one horde of snow trolls, but then the other one held. So we kind of decided...
Going through,
Yeah, so we kind of decided, so almost all the Northern Alliance were dead, but the snow trolls held, and so we decided... That was it. They defended the ritual, and that was it. The good guys won, which at parts during the game, that seemed like a pipe dream, to be quite honest. It was looking very grim for the defenders for a good deal of the match. Match? Can you say match? Yeah, why not? But it was, honestly, Steve, it was amazing. And Clem putting that bit of work into it just really made all the difference. And our friend Manuel, who brought the evil Basilian army, he's just really excited. This has got all his synapses firing. So he's like, oh, this is perfect. This is the back. So he's running with the backstory that Clem created. So he's kind of got another level of the project to do now that he's just created. And it's, he's going in a kind of a slightly different direction with it than he thought he was. And it's kind of enriched his hobby experience as well. So it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite nice. I mean, for me, if I'm entirely honest, I'm never too excited about siege games because I'm like, that's going to take forever to set up and it's going to be boring. Like, it's not going to be worth the experience, like so much work for so little actual interesting gameplay.
To be fair, it was a lot of work. It was a lot of work.
Compared to what I've seen in the past, because I think there was some siege rules for second edition in the Clash of King 18 or 19 or something like this, and I read them and I was like, oh, that's nice, but who has time for that shit? Like, who has a castle? Who has siege equipment modeled? No, well, I know someone who has a castle, Chris, but it's kind of like you don't really get occasions to play those kind of games so often. And
and to be fair, who's got an 8x4 table to put it on as well?
Sorry,
what kind of a maniac would have an 8x4 table to put it on?
Right. I mean, 12x4 at some point, but yeah. No, that's true. It really takes some effort, but I still went for it because I thought, let's try it out. And also, I knew that you would love it, and I thought, yeah, why not? And I have to say, I was surprised. It wasn't as crazy and unbalanced than I thought it would be. And it kind of made me think, I might want to organize another gaming day like this locally with playing a siege game, like get a couple of other players and try to do something interesting. Or maybe play it at half scale with 10mm Kings of War, because then you can really do something truly epic. Anyway, and I think between the time we took the castle out of your storage boxes to the time we put it back into the storage boxes, it was like 4.5 hours, something like this. If even that.
The game was so engaging, though, and particularly playing doubles. So, we were just chatting the whole way through about strategy and what to do. And I mean, it was just, from my perspective, it was just an absolute joy to play. At no point did it get bogged down particularly. Actually, I think the greatest quality of life thing we did was the deployment. I think that was the only sticking point, where it was like, generally in Kings of War, it's you place a unit, we'll place a unit. We did that for about 20 minutes, and it was taking a long time, and we were like, sod it. Everyone just put your armies down. We'll figure it out. Like, let's just get going. And I think that was a really smart move. But Clem, in terms of how, and just the rules work beautifully, right? So you can, as long as you try and keep things moving, you don't get bogged down. But Clem, in terms of your enjoyment, I mean, obviously you said you were surprised. Did you enjoy it as much as I did, which was literally one of the most fun games I've ever had?
I think I enjoyed it much more than I thought I would, to the point where I think I'm going to play it again at some point, which, if you had asked me before we played the game, I would have said, nah. It's just like, you'll never turn 40 again, buddy. I'm not playing that game again with you. You know what I mean? Whereas now I'm like, yeah, I would do it again. Like, also, it wasn't entirely broken, because sometimes when you read those siege rules, you're like, at that point, like, why don't I want to just get Legos or Playmobiles and just tell a story without having a game? Because it's just complete nonsense. What I mean?
Yeah.
But I didn't have that impression. Obviously, we didn't have all the equipment, like we didn't test all of the variants and everything. But it did not feel like an entirely narrative in the bad sense of the term game. Like, there was an actual game to it. I would change a few things, like obviously the nerf for the wall was a bit weird. There's another thing that I would definitely not use in the future, which is you nerf check the walls every turn if they have any damage. I would not do this because we very quickly realized I don't want to go onto the walls because they have some damage and they might rout and they will kill my unit.
Yeah, exactly.
And we avoided
it made a weird situation. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I think if you remove that part and you can actually move from the walls onto the walls, all this kind of stuff, a bit more than what we actually did, because we pretty quickly abandoned that idea. It can be even more interesting. Also, we played a very basic scenario in the end. Like, we played not exactly dominate from the center of the courtyard, but something like that. I think you could have it even more strategic if you have objective markers, like it's suggested in one of the variants of the scenarios. And I think you can have an actual really strategic game that also happens to be quite different from the terrain and the way your units interact with the terrain. And so I think it can be much more of a, I'm almost tempted to say, real game of Kings of War, while also being a siege game. So honestly, I was impressed. That's my concluding words on it.
I was kind of expecting us to fill in quite a lot of blanks by just making narrative decisions and comments, but actually the rules held up really well, as you kind of alluded to. Cool. Yeah, it was great. It was great, Steve. If you get a chance to do it, I know it's something that's difficult to get off the ground, but it was really good. Sorry, Clem, I interrupted you.
No, I just wanted to say it's. I think if I wanted to play a siege game, Kings of War are definitely the rules I would want to use for it, because they're in a way so simple and easy to follow along for everything else. That the small specialty rules that you add on top of it to make siege stuff don't make your brain explode. And we still managed to play our first ever game of siege with these rules in an afternoon while chatting and drinking a beer and everything. So just perfect for me.
Yeah, definitely. Cool.
Do you want to hear my idea for a tournament that I came up with? I'm not sure if I can be asked to do it or not. So it's a ambush tournament. It's 4 games of ambush, followed by a 2-on-2 game of siege.
I would love that.
Where you take however many people. Let's say we get 16 people. You split them into 2 teams arbitrarily, right? Make up your own story. We get the giant, like Mighty Empire style map on the wall. 2 teams, 1 on each side. They play 4 games of ambush. Like, you can do it Swiss style if you want, or you can do it based on the map about where they're going. And at the end, you have so if you're 16, 4 fortresses, and you have 2 per side, 2 defending, 2 attacking each fortress as a finale.
Sounds awesome.
If you do it, let me know ahead of time because that sounds amazing. No, but seriously, that sounds amazing. Yeah, that sounds absolutely amazing. Yeah. I just wish there was more of this stuff in Kings of War, and I think there will be, to be honest. But it's
you need to find the right. So, like, the main thing with Siege is you need to find the castles, right? So there's not many people who've still got mighty fortresses lying around from Warhammer. There's a few of them. But actually, the kind of castles you need are you need big pieces of polystyrene and a spray can, or not spray can, it'll melt it, but an hairbrush. Go from there, right? So it's just a logistics thing.
But that sounds.
But I think, I really, after the weekend where we did a bunch of narrative gaming, after all, I think there's really a lot of things. That could be done in this direction. Like, instead of having a tournament, more of a narrative excuse to play games. And in the end, it's the same experience, sort of. Like, you still play a bunch of games over the weekend, over Saturday. It's just you don't really come for what ranking you're going to get. I mean, you can always generate ranking if you really wanted to at the end. But also other players that are not so interested in ranking, or maybe they know, I'm just a beginner, I will be at the very bottom of it, which is never really nice. At least, I mean, they don't come for that. They can pretend, I don't even look at the ranking. I just played a nice siege game, or I played a nice narrative stuff, and in the end, they also had a great time. And they also played like the 3 games or 4 games or more if we use ambush, and you can play them faster. So I think there's a lot of potential to make even bigger events, gaming events, but that could also appeal to more players. And I think that's really something exciting.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I mean, Kings of War tournaments tend to be, and I know there's loads of cool variations and things and special characters and stuff, but they tend to be very straight up. This is a competitive tournament. It matters who comes first, second, third, who got best painted. It tends to be very generic in that regard, right? So if we had more, competitive players seem pretty well served around the world, and I think if we had more different experiences that, frankly, I'm much more interested in, it can only be a good thing.
I think it's a question of motivation, right? Like, I know whenever I try to organize gaming days locally here in Berlin, a lot of the players are like, yeah, but why would I wake up to come to, like, for 9 a.m. to play on a tournament and then play 3 games in a row and be exhausted in the evening? It's like, to play a tournament? Are you crazy? Like, play your games in the morning if you want to. I'll show up at 2 or 3 p.m., play 1 game, drink some beers, and just go home, and that's it. And I'm like, okay, well, to each their own, right? But then it means they don't get to play that much, and for me, it's a bit frustrating because there's less games being played. But if you don't make it a tournament, but instead there's a cool narrative, and you're like, if you come and play the first, like, vanguards with ambush armies, Steve, don't fall asleep right away. The vanguard of the armies fighting with ambush games.
Ambush is fun and exciting.
Yeah, then you can. I'm sure I can motivate people to come over to play more games. This is not a tournament. It's a cool story. I think it appeals to a different population, and we do need to appeal to as many people as we can. Definitely. I think that's
very true, buddy. Very true. And then, Steve, obviously, you agree with me. Kingdoms of Men should not be in the game.
What? Why? Kingdoms of Men is the army that all points are based from.
Yeah, that's fine, and you can keep the points. Just take them out of the game. Just have the points. That's fine.
I like.
You can use them. Just keep it. Just
sport. Kings of Men are awesome.
In what sense?
That's my next army. Because I want to do a historical Chinese army, and I'm going to make the Kings of Men. I might make them Brother Mark.
Yeah, we'll make them Brother Mark or Basilians. I mean, why could you not do that?
I like Kings of Men. Why hate on Kings of Men?
Because they're so fantastically generic, and no one ever has a Mantic army.
Got hero.
Exactly, yeah. The hero is literally called the hero. No, play if you want to take your Chinese men, just make them Basilian Chinese. That's fine.
Basilian is like an elite strike force. I hate Basilians.
Doesn't have to be.
It kind of does if you want them to be any good. I like Kings of Men. You know what army I think shouldn't be in the game? None of them actually. I really like all the armies. I'm trying to think of one now. Sylvankin. Get rid of them. Bullshit. It's just like take elves but make them super ridiculously strong by giving them a greater area elementals. Ridiculous. Get rid
But
of
you're just talking about the
Free
rules now,
dwarves.
though.
Free dwarves need to die. What the heck? Golak needs to get a backbone and just wipe them out.
I think one way or another. I don't think we need 2 dwarf factions. Yeah.
So you mean we only keep the abyssal dwarfs? I agree. Let's only keep the abyssal dwarfs, and the rest can go.
Well, that would be quite a cool twist. That would definitely not upset anybody.
Well, you know, in the lore, King Golak is like abyssal controlled, right?
I mean, I want to say yes, but I've not bothered reading it.
That's the really annoying thing about Mantic lore, right? Is there's some very cool stories in there. They're just been poorly told to date.
Yeah.
Right? And a lot of the books that have been published to date are not good. Like some of them are so appalling that I actually like literally the worst book I've ever read. But
come on, Steve, you've had a beer. Come on, which one? Which one is that?
I better not say in case the author listens because they're all Mantic. You know.
Maybe they need the feedback.
Yeah. He doesn't respond well to feedback. I'm told. But yeah. The books that so I've read Rob Berman's book, I've read Mike Rossi's book, and I've read I don't know what the pen name of the guy Danny Graves' book, whatever his pen name is, but all 3 of those books were genuinely really good fantasy novels that I genuinely enjoyed reading. And
Steps to Deliverance, was it?
No. That's a good. That was all right.
It was okay.
That was Mark. What's his name?
Mark Barber.
Mark Barber's book.
Yeah.
That was all right. I think the most recent ones have been the Halflings one I read was all right as well. That was pretty good.
Broken Alliance.
Yeah, Broken Alliance was pretty good. That was good kind of setup book. It set up the lore quite well.
And it was cool. It kind of explained Bane Chant, which is quite cool. Things like little things like that. I like things like that. I feel funny.
It's really fun. It's a really good book. I just really want Mike Rossi's book to come out because it's so good. It's about 3 dwarves, and he just writes it so well.
But you want to get them out of the game. What's with that?
Yeah, because I just don't like Brock armies. So, but I think there's some great books coming. I just wish they bloody published them, but they're delaying them also. We'll see. Is it
just global problems kind of thing, or
I don't know. I think it's just one guy's doing it and he's been told to do different things. But anything's got to be better than Drowned Secrets. I said that.
Yeah, I didn't think it was terrible.
Awful.
I've read Drowned Secrets.
Not a fan. Maybe I was in a bad place when I read it, but
I like the idea of the evil, coven or whatever it is. What is it, Abbey?
So actually, the villains in that story were the best part of it.
Yeah.
I was definitely on their side. I was like, "Come on, villains!" And then they didn't, win. Spoiler warning. But
didn't make
it. They did not win.
Right? They just.
It looked like it at one point because the forces of nature were so incompetent. But
it's literally at the end of that book. You're like, I just want you all to lose.
I didn't.
Especially the main character. I really hope the only character I like just sodded off halfway for no reason. The only sympathy, and everyone else was just an absolute swear word. I'm not supposed to swear on this podcast, but they were.
Well, you have been swearing though, Steve. So why stop now?
Apologies once again.
Apologies. Good. There we go. Well, there we go. We got to it in the end. I didn't think that book was that bad. Yeah. It had some good ideas. And I think it was somebody's first ever novel. And, Ben
Stoddard, he's a lovely man. He's very, very kind. He's a nice guy. I just, I hope he learned a lot from writing that one.
From the experience.
I really hope Ben doesn't listen to this podcast because I genuinely like him. He's a nice person. I just really didn't enjoy his book.
I'll edit that bit out. The bit where you were saying he was a nice person. Yes, good. Okay, super. Thanks, Steve. I enjoyed that. Thank you. Let's move on then. So, Clem, how is your Salamanders project going? Because mine's finished, and you played with my Salamanders army.
It's not true. You haven't finished the 10mm version of it. I played Salamanders before you did, so I think I won the slow grow challenge, didn't I?
Yeah. So it's
I played with you this and your models. but still, I played them first. I asked you if you were okay with it before I did, obviously.
Yeah,
But I played the cool Basilians during the weekend. And they're interesting. I think I prefer your list to mine after looking at it more and playing it. I think, that's how you probably do a list with them. Our lists are pretty similar, but yours are.
So we'd had a full day of playing Ambush and doing other things, and we're getting back, and someone arrived late and was really keen for a game of Kings of War, and I was like, "Oh, Clem, can you take one for the team, buddy? Have you got one more game in you?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure." And then we had the whole conversation, because I'd never played with my Salamanders army, so we had the conversation, is it okay if I'm the first to drive the new army? And it was like, no, that's really cool. It was an honor. And and Clem, how did you get on against you? And so the kind of, it's a lot of fire elementals. It's a greater fire elemental. It's a Phoenix, which apparently is about to get good. Some Ember sprites, a couple of regiments of Salamanders in the formation. It's kind of balanced. A horde of Scorchwings. I think I'm actually doing quite a good job of explaining the army. So it's quite kind of balanced, but a fun army.
3 mages with one has the heal, the other one the celestial restoration. First time that I played with these spells, and they really did a lot of work.
Yeah, so it's
I got 4 turns being wavered on the center heal, and being healed like 6 wounds, 7 wounds, and going back.
He was fighting a dictator, right? Just on the hill, and the endless battle, and then at some point the concussed battle captain sort of rolled down the hill and sort of wandered off because he had no idea what was going on. And then the dictator was just very confused, and then a horde of fire elementals, bang, smacked into him like he was hit by a Mack truck. It was hilarious. And but it's quite a grindy list, right? But the fire elementals do kick out, particularly with I'm going to say it's not fury, vicious. They kick out more wounds than I was expecting. So it's quite a grindy list with loads of heal, as Clem said. But it seemed to work, right?
Yeah, it worked reasonably well. I mean, the other, the thing that decided me to play Salamanders is the option to have Surge. And obviously I don't know how to play Surge yet. So
I would say you still have not played Surge. I think at one point you did Surge.
I did Surge a few things, and I even did a Surge train. I launched a Surge 24, if you remember correctly.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, that was cool.
So we were playing Control, and the Basilian had a regiment of cavalry on the far corner somewhere, and I was kind of winning on the points already, like on the Control squares. And I thought, maybe if I moved that horde of fire elementals and aim them toward the cavalry, I could make it, right? Like my mages are not so far from him. Let me have a check. Yeah, I need Surge 11. I have Surge 24 available. So if I play that right, it could work. And it did work. I think I got 12 Surge 11 exactly just to make the charge. And I think it failed. Like I didn't kill them at all. I killed them the next round, maybe.
You did.
But I mean, that was stupid, but that was still interesting, right?
It was cool. It was really cool. And there wasn't, to be honest, by that point, there was just a lot of dead Basileans. And I was actually quietly saying to Chris, now he's Manuel's run the regiment of cavalry over in the corner. Clem won't care about that. They're out of the game where they are. And then there are a couple of times comes like, I need to kill them. And I was really surprised by that. Just your bloodlust of no, they're not escaping.
Yeah, because they annoyed me earlier. Anyway, I remember also, thank you very much to never ever use the blood of the old king or whatever it's called. Like,
this was fantastic. Yes. Oh, this was amazing.
Never ever use it because I
Blood
think
of the old king is the best thing in the world. So it was in my list, and I was saying to Clem, Clem, don't forget the blood of the old king. And he was like, I will never use that. I've been burned before. I will literally never use it. So after a certain point, I was sort of really more antagonizing Clem than anything else, going, blood of the old king. And in about 2 turns.
I used it on I used it.
We're building, Buddy. We're building to it. So he went from I'll literally never use it. I don't care. I'm never going to do that. 2 turns later, okay, I'm doing the blood of the old king now. And Clem, how did it go for you?
I think the fire elementals did 7 wounds against themselves.
Yes.
And 5 wounds against the cavalry.
It was magnificent.
always how it goes. I think I killed my own dragon like this once. I don't know, like I was convinced, oh yeah, I need the boost, I need to, add a little bit more stuff. And yeah, just kill my dragon. I did enough wounds so that it could be deleted the next turn. And it doesn't really help you that much either. Like Vicious and Elite, okay, great. But that's not worth it.
I think we all agree it's the best special item in the game.
I think it's only worth it on a horde with 30 attacks. If you've got 30 attacks, go for it. Like the old shock troops. Like you have a horde of shock troops, blood of the old
Frostfang cavalry.
Like because then the volume of attacks is likely to be worth it. But
when you say worth it, though, you're also just increasing the chances that you're causing yourself problems. Because I used to have it. So my first love is the Trident Realm. And I used to have it on my Worm Riders with the 4-up regen.
Yeah, or Naiad Ensnarers. Why the heck not? Because they'll just regen it back next turn.
Exactly. But there's so much heal in my Salamanders list, I thought it was an acceptable stuff. Celestial.
Oh, also, Steve, did you not get the memo? We do not welcome smart comments about the game here. Like, we're just poor player, like mediocre players. So keep your good comments yourself.
That's a good point. Yeah, get back to countercharge with that thoughtful insight. Yeah. Good point. Yeah, good point.
My tournament results place me firmly in the mid to low tables, so I shouldn't worry. While I might sound like I know what I'm talking about, actual proof of the pudding is absolute rubbish. So don't worry about it.
Yeah, so back to topic, right? The slow grow challenge. I've assembled everything, I primed everything, and I painted 0 models when Chris is done with the army. So I think that's a draw, something like that. I printed you a 10 mil army. I hope you give it a try.
I'm eternally grateful, my friend. That will be painted quickly.
And I think we're about done for this slow grow. At some point I just need to put some pen, but that's just gonna be done very quickly. And I'm just curious to hear your thoughts about slow grow projects, Steve. Like, what's a good slow grow for you? Like, how do you hate them? Do you love them?
I've never participated really. We talked a little bit in our local gaming group about doing something like that, but it was kind of just, I paint very quickly, and so does my other friend Russell. Russell paints ridiculously fast. He'll do an army in a week, and then he'll win a painting wall with it, which is so irritating.
Oh, yeah, that's that extra bit of information that is irritating. Yeah,
that is very irritating, isn't it? I like the idea of it. The problem is that because I'm obsessive, like I said, I get carried away, and so I don't like to be. Once I get going, I'm going, and the way that I paint is quite quick. So once I crack on, I start really knocking through the units. For me, it's just getting going in the first place. I think it's a great way to get new players. People like doing that kind of stuff. I think it's nice.
You're like me then, Steve, to be honest.
Yeah,
once you get going, it's quick.
When we say slow grow, we don't really mean, right? Like, we don't really mean slow. Like, Chris is even faster than I am, but I think the whole idea is more how to get people to get cracking with a Kings of War army and just overcome their fear of, that's so many models, I'll never make it. It's like, no, dude, like, it's actually much easier if you just go at it and throw some paint, and each individual model will look not so great, but it's not a skirmish game. You don't care about every individual models. You care about the look of the whole army. And if you have awful painting skills, it will still work out great for a big army. Anyway, so what's your secret trick?
I would love more people to play with. I would love to be in a slow grow because I'd love to have enough people to have a slow grow with.
When you say, so let's talk about cadence then, because we're calling it slow grow because that's what everyone else calls it. So I think Clem and I, when we say slow grow, we kind of mean get it done in, what do we reckon, a couple of months, basically. Would you be up for that? or would you want to take 2 years to do a full army project?
Oh, good God, no! But I think for me, it's probably not. Well, I would take part to encourage other people to take part, but for me, I'm very self-motivated. I would do it because I want to.
Yeah.
And I only have one hobby, like I said. So apart from running tournaments, it's just painting stuff is fine. Occasionally playing Halo, but I think it's for a club where you've got some new players, or you want to get some new players involved, or if you're playing a shop, I think it's super. And I think doing like a 6-month slow grow is great, where you're aiming to get to 2,000, let's say, or 2,300. You start to aim, let's say, first 2 months we do 500 points, and then we go from there. I think it's a really super way, especially with Ambush, because then within a month you're playing proper games of Kings of War. People get the bug, and once they get the bug, they're away, aren't they? Really.
But what would work, Steve? So what you're talking about really is supporting other people.
Yeah.
But in terms of if you're going to join something, what would work for you? Would it be doing 500 points a month, or what kind of timeline would suit your style, which is pretty quick?
I don't know. For me, really, I'm not sure I'd join in. I kind of dislike being told what to do.
Yeah, me too. Actually, me too.
Sod. I'm like, don't tell me.
I'm a cat. Yeah, exactly.
I'm not. You don't join. Now, how many am I going to do? None or 3,000. That's what I'm going to do. Right.
I don't join things because I instinctively dislike the rules that come along with organised things. Yeah, I find it odd.
Tell you what's going to be. Here's what's going to work for me. There's a tournament in 6 months that I need to have a 2,000 point army painted for. That's what we're going to do. So my current slow grow, if you like, is that I've said I'm going to paint my goblins in time for the tournament I'm going to in January, and that's what I'm going to work towards.
Nice. Yeah, nice.
And to make it absolutely perfect, I said, my friend, do you think I'll be able to do this? And he went, there's no way you'll do that. Oh my goodness. You could not give me more motivation. I'm sorry, you're telling me I can't do something? I'm going to do it twice just to prove it to you. Off I go.
Perfect. And do you want to name names, Steve?
Oh, that's Matt. My friend Matt. So it's Matt Gorham's. It's his tournament. He runs it called Stain of Blood. They're really, really nice tournament, really good tournaments. Amazing guy. He runs them in Surrey. And so that's Stain of Blood. So I said I'm going to do a goblin list by the time it hits that. I need to print the entire. It's 100% Gungans.
Oh, that's
Gungan army I talked about. So a guy called Kyle Peach and I came up with this concept of the most annoying army it's possible to have. And so it's Gungans.
I mean, it's a theme. It's not my theme. It's not the one I pick. But stick with it, Steve.
What's more, I'm going to make it really nice looking as well, so you can't even hate it because it's going to look so amazing.
But Steve, before you got into minis, you were a painter, right? It was your hobby, right?
I did, yeah. I decided to teach myself to paint when I hit 30, which is a long time ago now. So I started to draw and paint and stuff, and I was okay. I was never very good. I was all right though.
Yeah, I mean, but okay, all right is good. Is plenty good. And did you learn?
My daughter's at art school. She's amazing.
Amazing.
Really.
Did you learn anything about colour theory or anything like that?
Nah.
Nah, me neither.
Yeah, make it up as you go along.
Yeah, there you go.
Don't lick your brushes is all you learned, or not even that. Yeah.
The only thing I learned in art classes ever is move the canvas, not your hand.
Oh, interesting.
Wise words.
All right.
Nice.
Interesting.
Excellent. On that note, so any more Kings of War stuff to talk about?
I think yes. You do have an existential question to ask everyone around, Chris, don't you?
Do I?
Yes.
I feel like I should remember what that is, but I don't.
It says, I'll read it out. It says, Chris, can you guys explain to me how a faction that's on fire the whole time loves sailing wooden ships and does so effectively?
Yes. No, good point, Clem. Good point. Yes. Can you guys explain that to me?
I thought about it, and I just, yeah. No, I wanted to mention it on the pod to get some feedback from other people, like one of our 3 listeners, because I really don't know.
And sorry, just for the pod, 2 people have highlighted the notes for me, and I still have no idea what we're talking about. Just to be clear, thank you so much, guys, for for trying to help me. But so you can't help some people, guys.
No.
There we go.
Ability to read. So this is covered in Rob Berman's book, by the way, which is excellent and coming out soon.
Oh my goodness!
It's got salamanders in it. So
That's why we invite you, Steve, because you know this kind of.
So they are heated in. Their blood is fire. They are.
We know that. We know that. We know that. Yeah, we know that. Yeah.
So the external, while they're warm, the only thing that's on fire is their weapons when they incite them to be through use of holy flame or whatever. It's their internal blood that's on fire, not externally.
Oh, okay. We're going to have to shoot off some emails, Clem, and go, we do a podcast. Can we get a review copy of this book? And can you fix the watermark so review doesn't have a typo in it?
Oh, he's on. Rob Berman doesn't work for Mantic anymore. Just message him. Say, can I read your book, please? And he'll probably send it to you.
Okay. I feel like we should edit that out of the podcast, but we will not.
Everyone listen to this.
Don't buy the new book.
And say Chris Thomas said, send you a message to get a review copy of your book.
It's fine.
You guys are internet celebrities now. You've got a platform. You need to start asking for free stuff.
That's it. We need to start making demands. We've got a very small and lovely listenership. We need to start being unreasonable. Now is the time. Now is the time, Clem. I
Sounds about right.
Clem being unreasonable, though. He's very. He's nothing if not very reasonable.
Who's that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would be. Yeah. But the thing is, Steve, if I had the tiniest bit of power in life, I'd be corrupt like that. You know, like if anyone, people offering me stuff I want to be corrupt. Yeah, of course, no problem. You know, of course. Just love the attention.
Life, I was a video games journalist, and that is absolutely what happens. And people, video games companies, they fly you around the world, give you loads of free stuff, and then you just lie about their games. It's brilliant.
And you can't really. Then you feel bad if the game wasn't very good, but they're lovely. They're lovely young men, and they put a lovely hotel on.
Yeah. Remember they flew me to Vancouver once to see a game I didn't even care about. We had 1 day of seeing the game and 4 days of hanging out in Vancouver. It was ridiculous.
Are you allowed to tell us which game?
FIFA.
I feel like I've heard of that game.
FIFA is a football game. It's the football game.
Oh, FIFA. I thought you were saying ether. Oh, yeah, football. Yeah, I'm sure.
Which I don't like. And I know nothing about football. But my friend that did know about football was going to see a robot game in Poland at the time. So I said I'd go. And I pretended to like football for 5 days in order to go. It was amazing.
So you were saying things like, oh, is that Kevin Keegan?
I was there like in the IT crowd. I was like, what was the ref thinking about? Think about Walcott as he always walks it in.
Excellent.
Back of the net, lads.
I love the IT crowd. Yeah, excellent. Okay, well, I hope you had a lovely time in Vancouver, and I hope no one bought that terrible product on your recommendation.
No, I didn't recommend it.
Who was your which publication? And we're getting way off topic now, but this is very interesting. Who did you work for? Print magazines or print media, or
I worked for a magazine for a while, and then I worked for a website that doesn't exist anymore. So.
Can probably tell that that's what it was then if it doesn't exist anymore.
It was called Games Domain, the website, and it was a shambles of a unit, but it was great fun.
I bet it was. Yeah, I bet it was. If I was working for a game review site, I'd want it to be a shambles. I think that sounds way more fun.
Yeah, I remember that my first week there, one of the programmers threatened to kill me because I told him he was camping in Quake 2. Yeah, lunchtime death.
Well, that's a very reasonable reaction to.
I was really like, what the bloody hell's going on?
Good. Right, I think it's time we moved on to listener questions. What do you think?
Oh God, thanks for the show notes. Bloody hell! Come on then. Right.
So we have a question from lovely listener Steve Evans, who is a very, very nice man.
Oh, I love Steve.
So, what's your thoughts on terrain in Kings of War? How much is too much, and what's the minimum you would be happy with? Sizes of pieces, what's too small or too large? And why am I'm doing a voice. And for you, is it just about any stuff scattered on the board, or do you prefer to tell a story and theme the terrain setup? Finally, what do you like for tournaments? Everyone using the same set, e.g. giant dwarf maps, or random on each table, and do you prefer preset or player setup?
Like, if you want to do Steve Evans, you need to do a soft Bristolian accent. Is what you need to do.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, he's coming. He's come on our hobby hangout, and he's absolutely lovely.
Amazing.
Yeah, and as you're painting one sword, he's painted 4 armies.
He's amazing. I've named my Storm Giant is named after him because they look very similar.
That's really cool. That's really cool. If you like Steve so much, why don't you answer his question?
Right. So I think the more terrain, the better. And I hate the giant dwarf maps. They were great. They served a purpose. I think there's not enough terrain on them, and they only work if your terrain pieces are huge. And I've been to too many tournaments that use giant dwarf, and you end up with giant killing fields in the center, which just benefits shooting armies. The more terrain, the better. I like 10 to 12 pieces of a decent size. I like a variety of terrain. So if you've got an all Pathfinder army, you're not overly what's the word? Benefiting, I guess, or advantaged. I think it's just it adds to the like when you play ambush, you're supposed to play it with more terrain to make it more difficult, right? Why do we not do that in regular Kings of War? I think it's just so much more interesting to have different heights of blocking terrain, different heights of difficult terrain to hide behind. I think it's just it makes the game more interesting, more visually engaging.
Okay, so let's talk about it then, the kind of tournament aspect of it, and then we'll come to the narrative aspect afterwards then. So, Clem, what do you think in terms of terrain tournament?
So, first of all, I kind of agree with you, Steve. I mean, without terrain, there's no game, right? And it's a game about moving pieces on the table, and so if the table is empty, then it's very, very boring. So you need to have good terrain. You need to have terrain that works for gaming, like a forest where you can remove trees. It was quite funny on the Roni podcast when he mentioned he realized he built some terrain like a forest with trees that cannot be removed. And like, oops, that's not working for the game. It's like, yeah, you need to have something different.
And sorry, Clem, just to interrupt you, I just remembered he talked a lot about the new Mantic trees on that podcast, a lot about those trees.
Really obsessed with them.
He's really into these trees. Sorry, Clem, carry on.
They're all right. They're pretty, I've seen them. They're okay. They're not bad.
They look nice. They look nice for sure. And I like that they do some terrain that actually works for the game and brings something to the table. I think it's smart. But so, yeah, the tournament terrain, I think definitely should be really focused on playability. Like, it's nice if it doesn't look too crappy, but I definitely want a hill that absolutely works to put units on it or next to it and so on. Same for difficult terrain in forests, obviously, but I think that's pretty easy. And then on the amount of terrain and placing the pieces, I think it's pretty much the same, right? Like if the table is too empty, then it's there's not that much to the game.
I think the easiest way of fixing this is Mantic produces a terrain set with usable Mantic terrain. Here's your hill, here's your difficult terrain, here's your forest, all in a box, by the box. I talked about it before. I'd like it even more if there was a Northern Alliance set, there was an EOD set. For me, that would be absolutely perfect. And then we'd be fighting in Pannithor, not, oh, look, there's that polystyrene hill that people make. And we'd all have sizes of things that are Mantic approved.
So, sizes of things, I kind of disagree. I like the diversity of things a little bit. Like to have every difficult terrain always the same size, the same style. It kind of always forces you in the same thing. I think it's good to have reference points, right? Because when you're new to it, when you don't have that much experience with the game, you just do not know what to buy or what to build. And so I think the more beginner your audience, when you're trying to tell them how you build a map, the more guidance you want to provide. Like, hey, this is the footprint you need to, like, here's a PDF, print this at home, and this is the outline of the terrain that you can put on your table. I want to have this with ambush rules, right? And then if you have no idea about the game, at least you have everything you need to play right away. And then that more advanced players just adjust and not always do the same kind of hills, forests, and difficult terrain. I think makes the game more interesting. But yeah, I don't know.
And then in terms of narrative terrain, for me, that's a super cool idea.
I'm with you on this one. Yeah, I agree. Like as exactly like you describe it. Like let's fight in Pannithor, not just on a piece of foam core or whatever, like a random MDF house that is quite
that
ugly.
Same generic fantasy house we always see, fantasy/medieval. Yeah.
I think it's good to have like I have a tournament in a week on Sunday that I'm running. There's 12 boards, 24 players. All of the boards are different, and they all have a variety of terrain on them. I think with Kings of War, because terrain is so important, you can't quite go down the narrative route. Like you can't construct a farmer's fields, like, and here's a castle with, and this is their manor. You know, you can't make the landscape that's in your head, because if you do, it makes it unplayable.
I'm with you. Yeah, I'm with you.
But you can have, like, I've got a bunch of great maps. Like I've got one map that's a coastline, and you can have like I've got a beached ship as one of the impassables, and like the rest of it is I've got the hills are kind of sandy, so it's themed, which I think themed is good. I think narrative.
Yes, I agree.
So the table logically makes sense and fits together, and you don't have a forest, map with a snowy hill on it or something, because that's what we got, and it doesn't look odd.
Correct.
That makes sense.
Cool.
So we go to the next question.
Yeah, definitely. As always, we're pushed for time. So we've got a question from Trent Soesby, who was actually here for the weekend. So hi, Trent, if you're listening. Why should brand new Kings of War players go to a tournament? Is the tournament scene getting too competitive? So I can't really talk about the tournament scene, because I wouldn't say I've gone to some tournaments, but I'm not really in. Steve, what do you think?
So I can only speak to the UK tournament scene. I mean, I've experienced a little of the US tournament scene, and that's a very friendly scene. I think for me, an ideal day is where I get to play 3 games of Kings of War in a row, right? I think I don't like it when I win too much, because it does get too competitive. If you're good at the game,
is that with the Swiss pairings? You end up too high. Right.
I'm slightly above average player, and if I get against the really good players, I get a little bit flustered. It's too much.
You fly too close to the sun and
right.
Get swatted back down again.
So I think there are, with tournaments, there are always players who are super competitive. However, you will end up against people of your level. And I think if you enjoy having a good level of competitive play, in general, you will have a good time. I've only ever had really 1.5 games of Kings of War that I didn't love, but I didn't really enjoy. And
interesting what the half game. It would be really interesting what the half game was. Was it the first or the second half you didn't enjoy?
The one game that I really hated was the guy who was just cheating, and that was it was dealt with, and that's unfortunate. But in years and years of playing, that's one game ever.
Yeah.
And the other one was against a very aggressive Spanish guy it was an all Twilight Kin chariots and dragons list. It was. And mainly it was,
Steve, was this, sorry, can I just interrupt you and ask, was this very recently? Because if so, we might address it in Topic of the Month.
No, it wasn't. It was back when I won Clash of Kings, or when I won the flight from Clash of Kings. And several years ago. And he was a very fun guy, but it was the first time I'd come across that super hardcore type gamey bullshit. And I think I struggled. Oh, also Nick's Scarecrow list, Nick Williams' Scarecrow list, that was bollocks as well. That
sounded horrendous.
That sounded horrendous. Awful, bless him. And Nick and I are great friends. And but I've told him how and that was just because I was in a terrible place right then. But in general, anyway, as I was saying, I think if you go to a tournament, you will end up against people of your level. Let's say you're absolutely garbage at Kings of War, and you lose and you lose and you lose. You're going to end up
against people who also lost and they lost.
Who also lost. And generally those people are the most chill, fun people.
Oh, you just have a beer. It's so good. You just have a beer, and it's awesome. It's a great time. It's just a different experience to the one if you're at the top table, right?
Yeah.
I imagine, not that I've ever been at the top table.
The games I had against a Clash of Kings at LGT, they were all so incredibly close, apart from one, because when I lost too much and I was right down the bottom, and that was just a very chill game. But so close, so enjoyable, so exciting. But actually, you don't get that in your local club, because in your local club, you end up knowing who's the good player and who's not the good player, and who you're going to get caned by and who you're better than. And you'll have some good competitive games. But really, it's the thrill of coming up against, wow, I've never played against Forces of the Abyss before. What the hell does that do? Oh, my God, this is... And they've never played against Rift Forge Orcs. This is great. I think, suck it and see is what I'd say. Not everyone likes competitive gaming, but actually not everyone at a tournament is a competitive gamer. Some people just are there to get away from the family for a day and have 3 full games without feeling guilty about it. Crack on.
Funny enough, I think before I went to my first Kings of War tournament, I was actually pretty nervous about it. And interestingly, the person I messaged was Steve Hildrew to say, Steve, I'm a bit nervous about going to a tournament. I don't know anyone, and going into a room full of people, not that sure on the rules even, is that going to be weird? And you were like, nah, you'll be all right.
You're right.
And I was. You'll be all right. And I was all right. Yeah. And I'm glad I went.
Oh, so thanks for messaging me.
So I suspect the...
Hello, there's children. They've joined the podcast.
Something like that. Yeah, I mean, I think tournaments are exactly like you described it, Steve, right? It's an excuse to play as many games as you can fit in a day. And just for that, I think it's an interesting experience. All of the Kings of War gaming events, like tournaments that I've been to, people have been lovely. And yeah, you find every and all levels of play. And so I think it's more a question of, do you really want to get 3 games in a day? And I know that in our local group, some people are probably not so interested in that. Like, they like the game, but not enough to wake up very early on the weekend and travel and go play games and come back exhausted.
Yeah.
So that I think I can understand. I think more narrative events might grab in some more players maybe. But yeah, for new players who's hesitating, should I go to a tournament? I think the only real question is, do you want to play the game whole day, like 3 games in the day? And the answer is yes, no matter what your level is and everything else, just go for it.
And even if you lose those 3 games, you'll learn an awful lot. You'll be, by the end of the day, you'll be a much better player and much steadier with the rules and much more comfortable with the whole thing.
I think it's fun. Like, you see different things. You see new people, new armies, new play styles. I mean, I think I understood how to play my Abyssals about game 4 of the German GT 2 years ago or something like that. Because I thought, okay, here's my list. I played with it a couple of times, but against the same people locally, right? And then after 3 games, playing with entirely new players, different opposing armies and so on, I realized I'm sure my list would work much better if I played like this instead. And game 4 and 5 went actually much better for me. And you don't get that kind of understanding and that kind of knowledge about your own army if you don't confront it to new stuff, which I think tournaments is the best place to do that. So.
Yeah, definitely. And you get more of a sense of what Kings of War has to offer, exposing yourself to more armies, more players, right? Cool. Right, let's move things on, because as ever, we're pushed for time. So Mark Zielinski, the godfather of Countercharge, asks us, what do you think of all the leaks Ronnie revealed during his Countercharge interview? I think they need Rob Berman back, but I think we've gone into that in some depth. I think as lovely as it is to hear all that, I think it's probably not the best thing in the world to sort of breathlessly tell us everything that's coming out in the next 2 years, as cool as that stuff sounds. But that's fine. That's fine. It's charming.
They didn't cover 2 years. I think they'll do that faster than this. I don't know. We'll see.
Cool. Yeah, cool. And I hope it all comes true. So, friend of the pod, Peter Swift. I know you have discussed and speculated about the new Mantic app in previous episodes. What are your thoughts about what Ronnie revealed about it last week? list builder, math hammer, living rule book, etc. Having already asked about favourite models on the Facebook page, what model is currently unavailable from Mantic that you would most like to see them develop? Or even what model would you like to be redesigned if it's already available? How do you, Chris, feel about Trident Realm being released as an Armada fleet next year? Right, so let's address those one by one. So the app, what do we think about the app? Just very quickly, guys. Positive, I would say. Sounds cool.
Overall, yes. I love Easy Army, like the way it presents the armies. Like having every rule that I need for my game in 1, 2, or 3 sheets of paper is just, I think for me, it's a big selling point for the game.
Me too.
Like I can see some entirely new, an army that I've never seen before. They hand me over their list. I have a quick glance through it, and I instantly don't understand what the strategy will be, but I know every rule in there.
Yeah.
For me, that's huge. And so I hope the app doesn't lose that very kind of super good clarity.
Definitely.
Like the way the special rules are presented, the keywords, the stats. I mean, Easy Army, for example, is not too great for its output for Firefight. Don't fall asleep, Steve. So stay with us.
Listening.
No, because I'm mentioning Firefight. I didn't want you to just go away. But anyway, so I think this is really crucial. For me, the app will be a success if it really supports the gaming experience. I think they've done a good job. What I've seen so far, I'm super excited about it. And yeah.
Yeah, and just for time reasons, Steve, just nod and say yes. It sounds good and it looks good.
Sounds good. I just really hope people use it.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, that's a very good point. Yes. How does Chris feel about Trident Realm being released in the Armada fleet? Really cool. I don't know how they'll balance that, though, because on the seas, the Trident Realm should surely be by far the most powerful thing. So, yeah, really positive, but I find it really interesting how they'll approach that, because actually I think it sounds on paper like the easiest one to do, and actually I think it might be the hardest army to do in there. Good. And in terms of favourite models, guys, favourite models, either stuff Mantic don't make models for, or things we wish there was a super cool model for, like a Soul Bane or something. I know they're not in the game at the moment.
Very quick answer for me. I want more plastic sprues per army. And so right now I'm doing Salamanders, so I want what are the small guys called? Like we're missing a lot of entries, right? We have no idea what they look. I do not have any idea what they look like.
Yeah.
I guess.
Oh yeah, the Gakuria or something. The little. Yeah, exactly. And they would be super useful in the list, to be quite honest. Having cheap trash stuff. It's really useful. Yeah.
So models that I want is more plastic sprues per army. That's one. And number 2, I want none of the Northern Alliance bullshit where some models you cannot buy outside of the Mega Army and stuff like this.
Yeah. They've got themselves into a tangle there. Yeah.
Yeah, how do you get 3 Salamander Priests? Well, you buy 3 Mega Army boxes, right? Because you can't buy.
Yeah, that's crazy. Absolutely crazy. Yeah, exactly.
Come on.
Yeah, all the kit bash like I have. I'd like, I mean, we talked about it already, Trident Realm stuff to be more available, depth horrors, things like that. Gigas. Steve, very quickly.
I just want to remake Elves.
Yeah, that would be good. That would be good. Are you, Steve? Are you excited about the Twilight Kin when it arrives? You should be.
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm such a hipster player that as soon as something becomes popular, I don't want to play it anymore.
Yeah.
Twilight Kin a lot. And I think it sounds really cool the way they're going. So yeah, I'll be interested to see how they turn out.
I started playing them when everyone was saying they were literally unplayable. I had a Northern Alliance army, and I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. Yeah. So let's segue on then to segment 7, topic of the month. And Steve, as your honoured guest, we gave you the frustration of having to think of something to do as a topic of the month. So do you want to just,
I planned as we enter maybe the 3rd hour of this podcast, we've hit the main topic. I said let's talk about gaming etiquette, because I just left Clash of Kings and I thought it was really interesting what had happened and how people had And there were some people, I heard some people complaining about how some people played, and I thought it was really interesting. So,
Steve, I'm going to be honest, you haven't sold that to me. Like, when you were explaining it to me previously, it sounded much more interesting. So,
thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
So, okay, so.
Broke him. That's great. 2 hours to break him. Wait.
Yeah. So, how do I explain this without trying to sound rude? Is that some people regard, let's say, European players as more casual, with not as exact with their measuring, and they complain about that. And I think there is a strong cultural element of more laissez-faire, more relaxed way of playing. I've never encountered this, as in the games that I've played, people have been really exact and pleasant, but there were some significant complaints about measuring, right?
So, dear listener, you have tuned into GB News, where Britain is great and always has been, and
but it's not.
Misremembering the past is the key to the future.
And so I thought I'd draw some examples of etiquette differences in gaming that I have encountered or I have discussed with people.
Is this something you encountered, or is this a perception? Do you think anyone genuinely experienced this, or is this a sort of a perception thing?
I think it's half and half, isn't it? I think when it comes to etiquette in gaming, right, across the table, people want a good, fair game in general, right? They don't want to be cheated. And I've referenced already the game where someone actively was cheating, right? That's very, 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 very rare, where someone is deliberately trying to pull the wool over your eyes. I think where it comes down to etiquette is around expectation. Nick Williams has written a lot of articles about gaming etiquette. So Nick, who I've played a number of times, has a thing where he, at the beginning of the game, he says, look, this is the rules I play by. If a dice isn't flat on the table, I will re-roll it no matter what. I will roll every dice, and I expect you to roll every dice. If your horde goes into the rear of my unit and has to roll 90 dice and it's a troop, you roll every dice, right? He sets the expectations, and that's fair and fine, right? I think where you start to play fast and loose with that, people start to get a bit narked. And I think you have to be clear in your intention. Like when we're measuring stuff, it's always a good idea to say, I've moved them here. My intention is that they are out of
charge range of your cavalry over there. Yeah.
Do you agree? Right? And the person says, yes, I agree. And when it comes to their turn, and they then go, right, I'm charging that unit. And you go, well, we agreed. No, because it's in. I've measured it. Look, that's bad etiquette, right?
Yeah.
Because you've agreed.
But no one would do that, right?
People do that. And, it has happened on occasion. And it's just either it's poor communication or you haven't set the expectation correctly. And I think I want to talk about some examples that I come up with. So an example from a game where I played against somebody, and they had, there was no suggestion that their dice were dodgy in any way. They actually had big square casino dice, right? Which are very, you can't cheat them. That's why they're casino dice. They don't roll very well, though. They're quite large. And so they'd roll the dice, and obviously they then take out the misses, and they pick up the hits and roll them again. Because we're rushing, because we're trying to be fast, this person would pick up the dice and drop them again without shaking them. And with these dice, they don't roll. So they were picking up a bunch of 5s and 6s and dropping them on the table. 5s and 6s.
Yeah.
And I didn't say anything because actually there was no intention for this person. And actually, I couldn't think of a polite way to say, can you roll your dice properly, please? Because it just makes it seem like it's bad grade.
But actually, Steve, to be honest, probably, as you said, this person probably didn't occur to them. Absolutely. And actually, that's probably the way they've always been playing it. And actually, probably it wouldn't be a terrible thing for someone to say to them, well, if you just take something and you drop it like that, you're just going to get a similar result again. They're not going to roll. So, I mean, maybe just explaining that to them in the nice way they would probably appreciate it, to be honest.
I don't think it wasn't a big deal in this particular game, and it wouldn't change really. I think maybe the aspect of, but that was something where I was just kind of thinking about, in terms of, roll your dice, you roll them so someone can see them. There's a big thing about picking up you take out the misses before you're picking up the hits, right? So you can make it really clear that there's no, you're not accidentally picking up too many hits or something like Right?
Yeah, definitely.
I think dodgy measurement is definitely a thing.
And what do you mean by dodgy measurement? Just being...
So, like, example, like, I played a game against my friend the other day, and he's like, I'm moving these forward 12. And I could see that he'd moved them more than 12, and it definitely wasn't intentional, but he just hadn't measured it properly. Luckily, because he's a good player, he'd marked where the unit was. So you mark where the unit is before you move it is an absolute, I think, a key thing that we should be encouraging players to do, because it just stops any suggestion of people mismeasuring, either deliberately or accidentally.
Yeah, you can ask Clem. I'm really bad at. I'm terrible at this. I don't mean to, but I'll pick a unit up without really thinking about it and do something, and then Clem's like, "No, you can't move it like that." And then exactly. And then it's sort of like, okay, I've got to put the unit back down again. Where was it again? So, but exactly right. So I do have a like an L-shaped little widget. So I'm going to just, that's my bad behavior, and that I appreciate. But it's just, sort of lazy enthusiasm. So I'm just going to start marking where the unit was before I pick it up. That's going to be my way to correct that behavior, because that's my bad behavior and I'm aware of it. I know I'm not super competitive, but still it's not right that I'm doing that.
That's particularly true for charges, right? Because when you do a normal move, okay, maybe sometimes it's not that critical, or it would slow down everything. But for contentious charges,
yeah,
you're not 100%.
I can say this weekend there were situations where it would have kind of made a difference. So that's something. That's a good point, Steve. That's something I need to be careful of myself. Sorry, Steve. Carry on.
Yeah. So there's those ones, like another example of I think there's a key piece of etiquette, isn't there, around takebacks. So one of my games against a Ratkin player, he was ogres, I think. Ratkin, ogres, and he had some shooters, right? And he forgot to shoot them, right? And he was into his combat phase, and he went, I forgot to shoot the shooters. And that's a real key point about what do you do as the opposing player? He's doing a different phase now. And as it happens, you should shoot them. It doesn't affect it. You've not done anything. You shoot them because it's a massive part of it. And actually, I'm cheating you. But then later on in the game, it got to like turn 4. And at that point, he'd done his whole combat phase. And he went, I forgot the shooters again. Right. And at that point, I'm like,
no, you can't do. No, I think to me, as far as I'm concerned, if you couldn't, if it hasn't affected something that's happened subsequently, then it's still okay. If it hasn't changed the effects of something, or the way things would have played out, I'm totally fine with it. But as you say, you can't come back after the combat phase when you've rolled all that dice and done all those wounds, and then also do the shooting.
I think it also depends about where if it's a casual game against your mate, I don't care. Let's play the whole game. Let's not be silly. If you're like I was, mid to low tables, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Shooting, it doesn't matter. None of this matters, right? If you're at the top table of a tournament, get stuffed. You forgot. We're at the top table. I want to win. Let's go.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that it depends on tournament. It depends on the etiquette of it.
But also at the top table, surely there is a different unwritten expectation that you really know what you're doing up there, right?
Right. And this brings me on to my fourth example, which was a friend's example, not my example. Now, this friend I know is a very nice guy. He's very pleasant. He likes to play fairly, I would say, right? And he was playing against his opponent. His opponent timed out in turn 7 and he hadn't rolled a charge. And he said, can I roll this last charge? And my friend looked at it and thought, well, if you roll this charge, I've lost. And if you don't roll this charge, I've won, and you've timed out. And he said, well, no. He was on table 4 of a massive tournament. He's going, well, no, I'm sorry, but you've timed out, so you can't.
Yeah.
And the guy who's playing against lost it, absolutely furious. Like this friend gives a present to every player he plays against. He gives a little present to them, to say, thank you for playing me. Here's a little gift from me. The guy gave it back. He gave him his gift back. He went, I don't want this, and gave it back to him. And I'm just like, you know, I think there is a limit to being kind. And I think in the top table, you time out. That's it.
Yeah. And you should understand that as well. To be honest, you should understand that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not even sure it's about top table or anything, right? I think it's a huge part of managing your time. I mean, maybe if it's the first time ever that you play on the clock or anything, maybe, but I don't know. It's for me that's part of the game. When
if you play on the clock, even if it's with a friend, if we agree to play on the clock, that's part of the game. And even if it's a casual game, if I clock out, I would say, look, I've clocked out. Honestly,
if you remember to tap the clock. So I've had another example where I was playing against another guy, and somehow I think the clock got messed up. He says it didn't, and we reached turn 5, and I went, whoa, you've got 30 minutes left, and I've got 6 minutes left. How is that right?
Yeah.
And he went, you've played slow. And I'm like, I don't think I've played that. And
that sounds like a very unpleasant. Yeah.
It wasn't unpleasant at all because he's a nice bloke, and actually, in the end, he let me play a turn on his clock, and he still won. So I mean, it didn't really matter.
He gets the moral victory and the actual victory.
Right.
Perfect.
So he was just being pleasant, and I was rushing anyway. But and at that moment, I really doubted myself. I'm like, I can be slow. I can get distracted and chat. And I was like, so I think etiquette is not black and white. You can't say this is fine and this isn't fine because we're often on both sides of the table. We're the one dodgy measuring. We're the one maybe not doing it right. And so it's about expectations, setting the expectation, and just being a decent human, I think.
Yeah, I mean...
Sorry, Clem, go for it, buddy.
No, I just wanted to say, yes, and there are things that, to me, are absolute must. Like, you should never, ever pick up successes. There's never a situation where that's correct, to me, at least. So I think there are a few things that maybe should even be in the rule book, right?
So this is exactly what I was going to say. I think there should be a page at the very beginning of the rule book saying, "Hey, hope you like Kings of War. These are the standards we expect of people." Because you could have it as a tournament pack, but then it's inconsistent. I think there should be something like that, a page like that at the beginning of the Kings of War rule book, just saying, we're here to have a nice time and respect each other, and these are the kind of behaviours we expect.
There is.
There is, be kind to your opponents. No, but I'm talking about very practical things because, to be honest, when I started playing or when I played, with just a couple of friends when I was a teenager, I had no idea what I was doing, obviously. And then you have to learn it at some point, like, when you actually play against someone you don't know or something like this, you never pick up the successes. If no one tells you that, you will not figure it out on your own.
That's a good point.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Or I think there is maybe one mention somewhere in the rule book, in the Kings of War rule book, before moving a unit, double check or before committing to movement. But maybe they could really take pictures of, like the small corner markers or whatever to get a reference of the unit, like give practical tips of how to play the cleanest way possible.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, it's I think when we play with somebody at whatever level, we're entering into a social contract where we're sitting with them we're spending 2 hours in each other's company to play this game and resolve it. And I do think that, when I really think just things like, I think we should appreciate our own good luck with dice rolls. And if we get some, if something goes really well for our opponent, it means something has gone terribly wrong for us, right? And I think just being a good person and just trying not to get salty and let them enjoy a nice thing happening for them. Because I think it's very easy just to go, oh, bloody hell, the dice, and get frustrated. Where I think we just need to bite our tongue for a moment, let the other person enjoy the game when nice things happen for them. Let them celebrate, as long as they're not, doing something bizarre. But don't, because I think I've played against people who just complain, the whole game, and it sucks the joy out of the game. It's like, what am I even doing here? Because honestly, let's be honest, we're not even at tournaments. What are we really getting out of it? There's not a great deal. It's just we're doing this for fun. This is something we do for enjoyment, and I think that should be very important. Yeah,
I agree. To not rub in your opponent's face when things are going too well for you, and when things are going bad, like not Yeah, be a good
Exactly.
sportsman.
Be fun to play against when you're winning. Be fun to play against when you're losing. You know, make sure the other person has a good experience as well.
Yeah, I think you can be competitive and still enjoy it. Don't forgive the swearing, but it's that whole don't be a dick vibe, which is just.
I think that sums it up. That sums it up nicely.
Be the person you want to play against is what I would say.
Totally. That's it. Yeah, that's it. Totally.
I mean, I think the another one that might I don't know if you've had this in games is have a very clear way to mark wounds, because I've had players use various methods and some of them I just cannot understand. Or it's kind of look
side with this.
So yeah, I think that's a big. Or like, I'm not even talking about having shitty dice. Like, is that a 6 or a 1?
Oh, I hate it when hang on a second, this dice has been knocked or something like that. That was never a 3. Yeah.
No, if you have like symbols on the 6s, symbols on the 1s, consistency, right?
Oh yeah. No, they should. No one should ever bring dice that have symbols on the 1s and only on the 6s. I know there's been an issue at a Kings of War tournament, but it's just. I think it's confusing. If you're the opponent and someone's rolling dice, you need to be able to immediately know, is this good or bad. And if it's super unclear, even if they're the most honest person in the world, then you don't. When you look at it, you need to have that emotional connection with what's happening. You don't have to. It's terrible if you look and go, well, is that good or is that bad? And you have to wait for them to tell you, because then, of course, you can't check anything is strange is going on. Like you're relying on your opponent to explain.
I mean, even for myself, right? I've stopped using some dice that looked very pretty. It was like dark dots on dark purple. And they're really nice when you look at them. And when you try to play a game with lots of dice rolling, it just doesn't work. Even for myself, like I'm like, oops, I don't even see what's going on. And I've played against people who have similar dice, and it's like, I have no idea how well you rolled now. So I think this is also not so pleasant.
Not ideal.
So skipping back to Clem's point about wounds on units, I am sick to death of playing against people who have beads to count wounds. The yellow bead is a 5, and this one is a 3, and this one is 2.7 wounds. Just use a dice that you can see. Good, or something clear.
Yeah, just whatever it is, as long as it's clear.
Like, how many wounds is on that? 4. Is it 4 or is it 9? Who knows at this point? Are they dead? Who cares? I'll just resign.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but again, it's sensible and you can play it. Yeah.
I mean, I've seen like D20, for example. I think those are when the table is not super flat. I've seen really, like, if you bump it, everything's over.
Oh, yeah.
I've got little acrylic dialy token things, which are quite nice. It's difficult for the opponent to see, but it's
like buddy. If it was me, I would just throw them out the window. They're too dark. You don't see when you're the other side of the table. You just don't see how many wounds there are.
So what's better, Clem? Just dice, just red dice.
Red D6s, like bright red, and no one uses anything near a red dice.
Different color to the dice you're rolling. Obviously, that's important. Yeah.
I mean, that's what I do with it. I don't know. What do you do, Steve?
I have red dice, but I have them in a little tray. So I think you don't want, because you're rolling a lot of dice on the table, you don't want them to be mixed up with the dice that are there.
Exactly. And Steve, your dice are a weirdo mix as well, aren't they? You've got crazy rainbow dice normally when you're rolling, or?
No, I used to. So I used to have all sorts of dice, but now I have 3 sets of 10. So I have
nice.
3 black dice. I have 3. What color are they? I'm trying to picture them in my head. They roll badly, so I should remember them more. I can't remember. They roll badly. I have 10 dice that I got from Adepticon in America, and they roll like garbage. They roll so many. That's why I win with elves, because they roll so many ones. I get the elites. But I have little 3D printed dice trays that I put my wound dice in. So
that's perfect.
And I think dice trays for stuff is great. So D20s work when you have those little D20 cups. You can put them in, so you see what they are. But I think 10s are better.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, put them in a little tray. That makes perfect sense. So, super guys, and we've got about less than 30 minutes left to talk about all of Warpath and all the rest of it. So, super. So I'm pretty sure there's more to be said on that topic. Do we have any last thoughts for the topic or for Steve for joining us on the pod today?
I am now without thought. Well, I'll tell you what's my thought is that Mantic's literally just released a blog post called Everything You Need to Know About the Mantic Companion. So,
Yep, absolutely. So it's before recording. Yep, it's there. It's obvious.
It's literally everything that we've just gone through. Or just gone through 2 hours ago, went through in terms of
why read it on the website when you can listen to a 3-hour podcast? That's what I ask.
Right? Why would you want to read this short blog post which summarizes things efficiently?
Yeah, we can read it to you and get it mostly wrong. I mean, honestly. Good. Super. Steve, thank you so much for joining us. Honestly, it really genuinely has been a pleasure. It's lovely, lovely chatting to you.
Love you guys.
It was nice. And anytime you want to come and waste 2.5 hours of your life, you know where to come.
Absolutely. I'm gonna start a GoFundMe to get Clement a new microphone as well, so that he can.
Really? You mean was it like speech lessons for my accent and so on?
No,
as
your
well?
accent is beautiful and
it is
incredibly enticing to listen to. It's mainly so you can shout over Chris a bit more, and
he can try.
The problem is he's doing the editing at the end, so
Right.
I mean,
Yeah. Absolutely.
I love you guys. You guys are awesome. I'll see you real soon. Okay.
Thanks, Steve. Take care, buddy.
see you soon.
Best of luck tomorrow. Best of luck.
Talk crap about me. Bye.
We'll edit that bit out. Right, Clem, as always, we've really, really pushed for time. So let's talk about very quickly. So let's literally give ourselves 5 minutes to talk about our Warpath Firefight. So, Clem, you came and visited, and we had a massive Warpath Firefight narrative event. I think we're going to talk about it in more detail on the next podcast because we sort of want to pass it.
Yeah, I think so. When we were preparing the show, we discussed, let's just have a quick emotional debrief how it went. But I think it was an experiment for everyone involved in a way, and I think we want to dive deeper into that. Like, what did go wrong? What did go well? What do we want to do for the next ones? You know, all this kind of stuff. And this will be probably a next topic of the month plus probably.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
But yeah, like from now, so I mean, I committed to bringing some GCPS, and I only had 700 and something points. So I rushed to paint the last one, like literally the day before getting on the train. And I really like. I'm super happy with how they look. They go well with my plague as well. And we had like 3 1,000 points games in parallel on a massive 12x4 table. That was really awesome looking.
So awesome. Yeah, so awesome.
And I think the narrative, it was a bit basic, a bit simple, but I think it still gave a kind of a backdrop for the games we played. And I personally was super happy with how everything went. Like, it was super funny to think more about what's the story here, what's the lore, why are these guys even here to fight. I mean, I think that really worked well in a way, like rather than doing pure games for playing games, like to have this kind of backdrop. So yeah,
to me,
definitely.
It made so much difference. I mean, dear listener, please check out our MUP Facebook page. We've published, the introduction Clem wrote for the Everything Normal on Gora. I think what was it?
on Gora. Yeah, it's just a small teaser, like the starting point. But and so the way I did it is I wrote small secret briefings for every player and every faction involved. So here's the background, like, why are you even on this planet to fight? What are your secret objectives? And they were extremely simple, right? Like, it was really not that sophisticated or anything, because I wanted to keep it simple for a first test. And I think it was exciting. I mean, I knew everything in all the briefings, obviously, but when I opened even my own paper that I had written, it's like, oh yeah, that's why that's what my army is here to do. And suddenly they come across this situation. That's where they come from. I don't know, it gives you a different immersion in the game. And that was really cool.
Said it on the day, Clem, you absolutely nailed it. I mean, it was absolutely perfect. The secret motivations and everything. We'll go into it more next month, but honestly, that stuff, and as you say, it just gives so much extra to the game. It's not just these are two random armies that are fighting on a random table. We were on this planet. It was so good. I mean, honestly, I loved, and they were some of my favorite games I've ever played. So, Clem, I played Asterians for the first time, and you played GCPS for the first time. I was the kid, the rich kid who had the daddy's fancy sports car that I had no idea how to drive, but it's fancy, and I'm in the first gear on the Autobahn. But Clem won handily on the scenario points, but actually, because I had my secret objective, which obviously Clem knew what it was, but actually I did pretty well on the secret objectives, I thought, and it was really thematic, and it was just, I mean, we'll go into it more next month, but it was just so cool. Firefight's a great game, and it just, the work Clem put into it just took it to a whole nother level. And it is, I mean, you did a great job, but it is, you know, it's not complicated, right? I mean, anyone can read the lore and do something similar, or just take what you've done, Clem. But it's like, honestly, it made such a difference to my enjoyment of the games. It was such a great job.
Thank you, buddy. I'm glad you liked it, and yeah, I think it improved the games. And to go back to read crunchy part of the games, that's the first time I played 1,000 points with GCPS, and at first I had no idea how the whole faction would play, like how do you build a list for them, and I think I understand now slightly better. And it's really interesting. Like yesterday I was looking at enforcers, and I'm like, how can I get rid of enforcers with my GCPS, right? Because they're pretty high, pretty elite guys. And so I got some good pointers from the Firefight Fanatics Facebook page. But yeah, I think it's a really interesting. The same thing when I played the first time against Asterians. Like before the game, I vaguely knew the shields, but I didn't really know how the rule even worked. And so the first time you're like, okay, I have my Strider. I'm gonna shoot the big guy there. That's what you do, like your high AP shots and so on. And then, all right, well, you've got 4 hits. Thank you. That removes 4 of my shield token. And like,
I'll just top up my shields again, kind sir. Thank you for doing business. Yeah. Oh, every time you did that, I was very happy, man. Yeah.
So this
is wasting his shots with his Striders again. Very good. Yeah, but it was cool. And from my perspective, you know, losing the game pretty significantly on scenario points, I still managed to take down 3 Striders, which was super cool. But I think we'll go into that in more detail next month, right, Clem? But I'd say loads of lessons to take from it. One of which is don't stay up playing Kings of War until 2:30 in the morning the night before. That was a big one. Yes. And then that takes us on to our Warpath Deadzone, for which we have nothing to say because we stayed up until 2:30 the previous night playing Kings of War. So, so we were, and I love the idea, Clem. We had there was going to be a game of Deadzone in there, but we just too slow starting the day, so we made the correct decision to chop the Deadzone game, unfortunately, and just went straight into the big battle.
Yeah, I mean the big battle was also something interesting, right? So we played 2 vs 1 twice. So there were 2 plague players that each faced 2 1,000 point armies. They had slightly less points, 1,500 points for the plague and 1,000 points each for the opponents. But with a respawning special thing, every plague unit that dies respawns in the end phase on the table edge. And we played Invade. And I think Invade was a really interesting scenario. And I think it's kind of missing in the Firefight. And I think there are a few things that we can expand on a little bit and come up with even cooler narrative and challenging scenarios for Firefight.
Definitely,
That's
cool. And I'm sure we'll talk about it next month, but just the one thing I want to mention is that my friend Chris, who'd never played Firefight before, he's a super smart guy, but he's not a huge tabletop gamer. Normally when he comes to visit me we play, but he played as the Brockers, and the plague just stopped going near the Brockers because they got sick of getting murdered, which was pretty cool. So let's move on, Clem. If we can just leave it there, just purely because we're pushed for time. I'd like to talk about that all night, if I'm honest. But so segment 10, Pannithor. So Clem, this month you were to read the Asterian lore in the Deadzone and Firefight books and explain it to me.
Initially, I thought that was a mistake because I thought last time we agreed you would do the work and I would sit down and enjoy
and ask the good questions. Yeah, you do the good job. And next month you'll get the luxury of doing that. But this month,
yeah. So I did. I actually did. I had some time on a train. I read the fluff in the Firefight book, but did I read in Deadzone? I'm not too sure.
I don't think you did. You told me you didn't, but that's still pretty good going, buddy.
Yeah, but so no, it was interesting because I basically wrote them into the campaign without knowing too much about them, so I kind of like freestyled a few things.
It makes it all the more amazing what a great job you did. Because most of what was in there was super. I mean, it fitted perfectly. Really, it did.
All right. So, so Asterians, what do? They are a very old and disciplined society. And they rely on rituals for everything to guide their everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
They can have a neutral position versus the GCPS, but there's tons of tensions internally. Like some factions internally are like, nope, GCPS are really evil, and we need to fight them. We can't just be neutral and independent them.
So are they just? Do they not see the GCPS as a threat then to them?
So the official position is no. It's more like a neutral positive, like try to warn them, hey guys, why don't you just not go in that area of the galaxy because bad things will happen. Like try to warn them about something. So that's kind of the benevolent attitude, I would say.
But was that genuinely benevolent, or did they have an ulterior motive for that? Do you think?
No, I think. I mean, we can dive into this later, but I think on the surface of things, it genuinely is. You know what? You're cute. Your civilization is 10,000 years old. Ours is 20 times that. So we've been there, right? Like we've done the mistakes you're doing right now. Please don't make that mistake now to go and get plague in the face, because we've had this. Because spoiler alert. The death arc, so the area where the plague is, it used to be Asterian space, and from what I understand, the dead worlds used to be Asterian worlds, and they had their own plague back in the days, a very long time ago, and the only way they could win or defeat the plague was to take drastic measures and really diminish by a lot the number of planets they occupy and how they do things, and get into a very structured, like ritual-based organization of society to not fall back in the trap that the GCPS is falling in.
So the plague was an existential threat that significantly reshaped their culture and their society.
Yes. So I think they name it differently in the book. Like it's not directly the plague, but they had a sort of plague, like a very similar thing, and that really entirely shaped their society differently. As you mentioned at some point, right? Like maybe there's a reason why they only have marionettes, basically remote controlled robots on the battlefield, or almost. And so one is because they value life and so on, but also maybe they just don't want to get exposed to the plague.
And so I mean, sending GCPS soldiers against the plague just feels like throwing gasoline on the fire, right? You're just creating more potential victims.
Feeding it's absolutely. And the other thing is not respecting like quarantine. I mean, the enforcers and GCPS is trying to block access to the death arc, but it's not doing that good of a job. Like there's too much greed, and there are still people going in there, and plague is still escaping.
So
right?
The nature of the GCPS basically guarantees people are still going to go in there for the resources and everything, right?
I think so. Yeah. I think if nothing drastically changes, the plague is going to just destroy the GCPS and enforcers. Like they're not doing nearly enough to fight it. And Asterians did in the past, and that's why they survived it. But yeah. So the other obvious thing, right, is who created and where does where does the plague that hit the Asterians come from? Is it something that they discovered from a previous civilization or another enemy, or is it kind of like flying too close to the sun, like trying, like a big nanotech whatever discovery, like building the artifacts that maybe were intended to do whatever?
I speculated, this is just me making stuff up, right? But I wonder, they're such an old and proud race. I suspect they were kind of like, okay, how can we defeat death itself? Like, how can we live forever? Something like this, and doing this kind of research.
That sounds about right. I mean, they already do live a very, very long time. It's not specified in the book, but it looks like they got it almost covered. But I think there might be something like this. Like I think it's really something that they invented that just blew up in their faces, and the genie in the box, and they really had to drastically change. And now GCPS is about to experience a similar thing, except they didn't invent the artifacts themselves. But
so, Clem, who do we think? So the old abandoned worlds then that aren't Asterian, or they might be Asterian, maybe even.
But they are Asterians.
The ancient civilizations were Asterians.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, from what I
remember
reading it, like the planets in the Death Arc, like where there are artifacts and like full cities and planets abandoned and so on, these used to be Asterians' world that they basically did like containment protocols, like the equivalent of containment protocols, but the even harsher version to contain the plague, like the whatever came before the plague, or the plague applied to Asterians.
Nice. And can you tell us, Clem, very briefly a little bit about the Matsudan and the Kalishi?
So Matsudan, I don't remember reading much about them. The Kalishi, they are actually spies. They're, if I remember correctly, they're like traveling salespeople, so to speak. So they do mix with the GCPS, and they are actually more direct than marionettes and remote control robots. But they are actually the spies of the Asterians. So whenever you see them, murder them. Which I think is also a good advice in terms of gameplay. If you see them, do not let them charge you.
Oh, they did some terrifying things on the table. I think the Matsudan are actually kind of, the Judge One are probably the good guys because they're the pacifists who have been bullied by the GCPS and they refuse to fight back. But maybe the Matsudan are one of the good guys because they're very honourable. They're Japanese sumo samurai. So in Deadzone, for example, if an enemy model is pinned, they won't attack. They literally, in the rules, can't attack them. So maybe they're kind of approaching a good guy, and I think they're supposed to be almost as old as the Asterians themselves. And the Kalishi, are they actually Asterians, or are they a different race?
I think they're different, but I don't remember. I don't remember details about this. I need to do more reading in the end, I think. So that's another. After writing the narrative, so for the weekend, like both the Kings of War narrative and the sci-fi narrative, made me think, yeah, it's actually quite fun to dive a bit deeper in the universe and try to find how to shape our games with stories.
It makes a genuine difference in our games. That's the key, right, for us.
Yeah.
It's had meaningful improvement in the fun we were having.
Yeah, in a way, I'm happy to just not necessarily follow canon exactly. Like I wrote stuff for the Asterians that is what I understood from them, and that's it, right? Like even if it doesn't follow canon, it didn't stop us from having a good time while doing it. But I think it might be interesting for me to get better knowledge of what is already out there, like the existing fluff for both universes. So that I can craft better and better narratives and create an even more enticing universe to play games in.
So actually, us doing Pannithor, it's been a good thing, right?
Yeah, I think it's a good. In a way, initially, I think it was a bit of putting our money where our mouths are, because we say, oh, we want more lore, and but we didn't read any of the existing ones, so it sounds stupid. So I think reading some of it, and also doing small nuggets of okay, here's how this thing works, can be useful for listeners as well, or for ourselves, to focus on one thing at a time and then grow our knowledge of the universes slowly. I think that's I'm quite happy with what we've done here, also to do some self-congratulating.
No, but he deserved to be self-congratulating. Honestly, it was amazing, and I think gives us a really great starting point to go on and do even more exciting things. But yeah, it was an absolute joy, and I really think there's a lot of scope for this in the Mantic universe.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the games are competitive, and that's great, but I think there's a real space for it to be more narrative. It can still be competitive and narrative at the same time. You still want to win, but you want to win accepting that it's within the constraints of the story, etc.
I think, in a way, I like also that the fluff is not entirely and extremely defined on everything always.
Yeah.
Because it kind of feels liberating, and like I feel much more free to write almost whatever story I want in the universe. Like I don't want anyone to tell me every single thing. I want to have a good backdrop and some inspiration, and then go crazy while writing my own story, my own, the pitches that I wrote for the weekend. I feel like in another universe that would be extremely detailed, and I won't name names, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I had the impression that you just can't really write stuff, because I have the impression that there will always be someone that comes like, yeah, but actually, in the Blood Angels chapter, whatever, of book number 35, that's not true. So you're wrong with your story.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you're talking about, I'm trying to write a cool story. We're having a good time with our games.
I think that genuinely would happen. Yeah, I think it genuinely would. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I tried to write an Age of Sigmar narrative campaign. Had this really cool idea where the Stormcast, you think of the bad guys, are actually the good guys, and I just couldn't get it off the ground because everyone was just nitpicking the just points that really don't matter. I mean, to me anyway.
I agree. So yeah, exciting. I think I'll read more and maybe write more narrative stuff. And I think we had another cool question for next week's Pannithor, or maybe we could have listener questions or theories. Worlds, are they the same planets, the same universe at different points in times, or not? And we'll leave it at that and talk about it next week and see what you guys think. Or maybe there's something that's already been written on it and we just don't know about it.
Which is something that happens, like with Golik earlier. Didn't you know he's secretly being influenced by the bad guys? No, we didn't.
Of course we knew that.
Who's Golik, honestly?
I've heard that name. Anyway.
So, Clem, we're going to be... I don't know what we'll do with it, but we're going to be recording with our friend Manuel very soon, because he did a 2,300 point Kings of War army in 5 days, and I feel like we just need to get him on to chat about that. And
it's also not just 3 hordes of elementals. It's a shit ton of Basilian infantry, right?
Yeah, totally. It's loads of regiments. There's a lot to it. It's only 1 horde of Elohi as well. So, yeah, you're right. Exactly. There's a lot to it. So he's got photos up on the MUP Facebook group. So I'd encourage everyone to check them out. I just want to say one more time, Clem, thank you so much for making it such a magical weekend. It really was. We'll talk more, dear listener, next month about really the logistics of it. And actually, I'd like to read out the story bits and all that stuff because it's just so good. But just want to say, Clem, thank you so much, buddy. I had such a wonderful time. Yeah, really magical time.
Yeah, it was a really smart idea that you had to invite a few buddies over to do what we love. I think that's a beautiful way to celebrate.
I'm already thinking it could just be like an annual thing, like it's quite a cool excuse.
Cool.
Thanks to Mantic Games, our podcast is 100% unofficial, and they just make awesome games. Thank you very much, and the miniatures is pretty good too. If you're listening to this on a podcast streaming service, please give us a 5-star review. If you want to write a little review saying, hey, this is interesting, please do. That would be great. Apparently it helps us, something about the algorithm, who knows. But thanks for listening to the very end, dear listener. We really appreciate it. Clem, anything else to say before we finish?
And not really. Looking forward to the next episode. And till then, have a good time, guys.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks, dear listener. Clem, anything to add before we actually start?
No, I don't think so. I think we should just jump right in.
I can't remember what I normally say at the beginning now. There's too much pressure.
Welcome to Counter Charge.
Ready?
Except it's the Mantic Universe podcast.
Let's just ready.